Following an emergency request for removal in this file yesterday that was granted, that I reviewed the petition, authorized the petition, and issued a removal order. So this is the prelim following that. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Good morning, Your Honor. Nicole Underwood, lawyer guardian ad litem for the minor children.
Ms. Stasia Thomas, counsel for the department.
Christopher Farian for the department.
Michael Brooks, I represent Father Dustin King. Mr. King, identify yourself.
Dustin King, the father.
Michael McFarland representing mother. Please introduce yourself.
Kirsten Miller.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, you had a chance to talk with your clients, is that right?
I have.
Yes.
Very good, I appreciate that. Have you each confirmed that your clients have received a copy of the petition?
Your Honor, my client only received a email copy. She was supposed to be served this morning, but I provided her a copy early, and she has had a chance to read it. So.
Okay, very good.
Well, that's a service. Okay. Yes, he's been received. Yes, he has, excuse me, received a copy of the petition.
Very good. All right. I see that there was some preliminary inquiry done as to whether or not there's any Native American heritage, and it has appeared that there are no indications of that. Were you each able to talk with your clients about that piece?
That's always been Mr. McFarland's bailiwick, not mine, so I did not ask the question.
I got Seneca Indian.
All right.
There you have it.
Would you swear in both parents in case we need to ask them questions directly?
You can remain seated, but please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Very good. Okay, Mr. King, you said Seneca?
Yes.
Is that a Michigan tribe?
My grandma was it must have been.
Okay.
My brothers found it out with Ancestry.com. We're related to Bear Jenkins as well from 1592.
Interesting. Okay, so do you know what your grandmother's name was or her name?
Yes, Maud Below Smith.
And do you know how to spell it?
MAUDE BALAAU.
MAUGE.
Ballo. Ballo is BAL. Beulah or something.
Well, she's here. You're here.
That's my mother.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, my grandma's been dead since 72. Great grandma.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Well, the long and the short of it is the caseworker will need all of that information in order to send it to the tribes to make sure that you're.
Get it from my brother.
Okay.
Chad.
All right. Well, we'll leave it to the caseworkers to follow up with your brother and try to get some of that information to find out whether or not your children would be entitled to additional services or caseworkers through the tribe in Michigan. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Ms. Kirsten Miller, do you have any reason to believe that you or your children would be eligible for Native American intervention on your side?
I think we're Cherokee. That's my grandma. No. There's not a no.
Well, we're told there's some, Your Honor. So I don't know if it's up to the tribe to decide that.
Both.
Well, I'm sure the department would be happy to supply whatever information they can find up to the Bureau of Indian Affairs to see if you or your children could qualify for any additional services. So please make sure you give all that information over to Mr. Farian or to your attorneys if you're not comfortable working directly with the department, and then they can pass that along. Any questions on that point?
No.
All right. Okay. Well, you each have a right to an attorney, which is why Mr. Brooks and Mr. McFarland are here today. You always have the right to hire your own attorney, but that person would have to contact the public defender's office and get that information. You also have a right to trial on the allegations of the petition. And as I understand it, that is what you're requesting, Mr. Brooks?
Yes, Your Honor, a bench trial. And I have advised my client of his right to have a jury trial. But I have told him my opinion is we would be better off with a bench trial.
All right. Well, Mr. King, if you change your mind, you need to let me know that in writing within 14 days on the jury trial. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Mr. McFarland, do you know how your client would like to proceed?
I do. The petition references a current domestic violence offense, Your Honor, which my client is being charged. Therefore, a no contest would be appropriate, Your Honor. I've discussed that with the guardian ad litem.
Any objection to that, Mr. Brooks?
None.
Ms. Thomas, your position?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
No objection. Very good. All right, so we'll get to that in just a moment. Both of you have the right to seek placement of your children at this hearing and to give me any position or any argument on that. You also have the right to admit or deny the allegations and make a statement of explanation, but we've already covered how you'd like to proceed. Okay. And of course, you all also have the right to have the petition read in its entirety onto the record. Mr. Brooks, would you like?
No, Your Honor, we do not want it read.
Mr. McFarland?
No, Your Honor. I've inquired with my client. She does not need to have it read. She is satisfied with its placement. As she agrees, she does not have satisfactory place right now. The children we would like to address parenting time at the conclusion or sometime this proceeding.
Mr. Brooks, is your client seeking placement at this hearing?
Well, he wants placement, but I have told him that given the circumstances, unless and until he has adequate housing for them, we're not pursuing it today. That doesn't mean we aren't pursuing it, but not today.
Has he also had the chance to supply names of relatives that he would prefer?
Yes, the kids were supposed to go to my brother Todd last night. Dustin Michael King was, because I've had him for 3 months since July when his mother dropped him off because her boyfriend.
Well, she just wants to know the name and the address.
Okay.
Well, if that's already gone to Mr. Farian for exploration, that's
He
important.
was supposed to, and he lied to me and sent him to Jessica instead.
Just answer the judge's question, sir.
All right, well, if there's anybody else that you would like explored for placement, that information is important to have right away.
Possibly Chad King as well.
All right.
Same.
And I know Mr. Farian is willing and able to explore those relatives and let us know how that comes out. All right, for purposes of scheduling your trial, we went through this yesterday, and I think, Ms. Underwood, you are not available Monday the 13th, but you were available Friday the 17th of January, is that right?
I believe so, Your Honor, let me get there. Yeah, the 13th in the afternoon, I was not available. I'm available in the morning, but I am available the 17th.
Okay. Mr. Brooks, 1:30 p.m. on Friday, January 17th?
I'm writing, Your Honor.
Very good.
Time?
1:30 p.m.?
I'll be fine.
Very good. And then for purposes of pretrial, would you like that consolidated with the disposition date for the mom?
That'll work.
May not have a whole lot of time available. Monday, December 16th in the morning at 9?
What is that again, Your Honor? What hearing is that?
That would be for your pretrial and for the initial disposition of the mother's case. If that gives you enough time, Mr. Ferry?
Again, the time?
Be 9 o'clock,
What is the date again, Your Honor?
December 16th,
That should work.
December 15th?
16th. It's a Monday. At 9.
Your Honor, maybe a little bit more time possible, please.
The only other option would be that same week, Friday, the 20th at 9, because the Christmas is the week after that.
That will work, Your Honor.
Ms. Underwood, are you available Friday, the 20th?
At 9?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good.
So December 20th at 9, Mr. Brooks?
December 20th at 9 o'clock will work, Your Honor.
All right, and that's for the pretrial on your client's request for bench trial, which is scheduled for January 17th, 2025.
So did
At
you also
1:30.
say that's dispo for mom?
Yes, that will also be the disposition date if I accept her. All right,
The 19th, you said, Your Honor?
20th.
20th, okay.
She needs this too.
All right, Mr. Brooks, will you and your client be staying for the duration of the plea for mom and for discussion on parenting time?
Well, yes, because number one, I have another hearing right after this one. And number two, we are interested in that issue.
All right, well, let's go to your client, Mr. McFarland. You have discussed the implications of a no contest plea with your client?
I have, Your Honor. We've also discussed services that she would need and anticipate being evaluated for.
Okay, Ms. Miller, no contest plea essentially means that I would be reviewing the petition and essentially taking those statements as true in order to identify the issues that you would need to work on with your family. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. If I accept your plea, you are giving up your right to a trial by judge or trial by jury, the right to have the petitioner prove the allegations in the petition by a preponderance of the evidence, the right to have witnesses against you appear and testify under oath at trial, the right to cross-examine witnesses, and the right to have the court subpoena any witnesses that you believe could give testimony in your favor.
Your Honor, my client is suffering some painful reactions to a health issue. We're going to be around, but I think we'd like to leave the room momentarily. You can continue procedures with this lady.
All right, thank you for the heads up. All right, so Ms. Miller, those would be your trial rights in short, along with many of the other aspects of the trial that go along with that. You would be giving up those rights in that process if I accept your plea and if you decide to enter a plea. Do you understand that? Is that what you wish to do?
Yes.
With regard to the consequences of your plea, or in other words, what will happen, the court will do the following. There will be continued investigation by the caseworker to see what the problems are in your family and how and whether they can be solved. The court could dismiss the case if there's no need for the court to be involved. If it appears that there's a problem that may be solved, the court can make the children temporary wards of the court, place them with mother or father or with relatives or in a foster home in order programs for you and your children, such as counseling, drug and alcohol treatment, assessments, and parenting classes. If it appears that you will not be able to provide a proper home for the children in the reasonably foreseeable future, the court could terminate your parental rights. In regard to the plea itself, the plea can also later be used as evidence in a proceeding to terminate your parental rights. Do you understand the consequences of your plea?
Yes.
Do you have any questions about any of the information I've given you so far?
No.
Is anyone forcing you or making you enter a no contest plea today?
No.
Has anyone threatened you in order to get you to enter a no contest plea?
No.
Has anyone promised you anything in order to get you to enter a no contest plea?
No.
Are you under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or anything else that could get in the way of you understanding what you're doing here this morning? Would you say your decision to enter a no contest plea is one you've made of your own free will?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas, as it relates to the no contest plea, would you like to present any evidence on the issues that you'd like Ms. Miller to work on?
Your Honor, I would ask Mr. McFarland if he would, and Ms. Underwood, if they would stipulate to utilizing the petition as the factual basis for the plea. And if not, then
Yes, Your
I
Honor.
will call Mr. Farron. Okay.
Objection to that.
All right, Ms. Underwood, do you find it to be in the serving the best interest of the children for me to accept the plea from this mother?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So it would appear that the main allegations in the petition.
Your Honor, I'm happy to, if you would like, I'm happy to summarize what I believe the department would indicate are the main issues.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The main concerns for the department, and as it relates to Ms. Miller, would be parenting, so parenting education. We'd also want to ensure the basic needs can be met, so housing and employment. Because of the domestic violence, we would request domestic violence counseling and education. Complying with any necessary bond conditions, whatever, from the criminal matters, which I believe that she is handling. And then I think that it would be also appropriate to address some mental health and just ensure that there are no outstanding mental health needs that are needed through a psychological evaluation.
All right, Ms. Miller, does that sound like and the naming of the areas that you'd like to work on as well?
Yes.
That's what we went over.
Thank you. Very good. All right. I do think that sounds appropriate. Are the attorneys satisfied with the advice of rights and the factual basis of the plea?
I am.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I am also satisfied the plea is knowingly, voluntarily, and understandably given with a full understanding of the consequences, and that the record supports that there has been a violation of MCL 712A 2B1 and 2 as it relates to the home environment of the child in the care of all of the children in the care of this mother for all the reasons that were articulated. And I'll look forward to reviewing the case services plan. You're welcome to engage in some of those services voluntarily. My assumption would be that there will be a family team meetings following and incorporating a conversation about those services as well, so you can have some good information on how to get started with this. Who's the caseworker on this one, if we know yet? Foster.
Your Honor, it'll be Fostering Solutions. It's my understanding that Christy Brinker would be the direct worker and Ashley Beach, I believe, is going to be the supervisor.
Okay. All right. All right, on parenting time, what is the department's position?
Your Honor, I believe at this time we would just ask for supervised per policy requirements. One moment.
We anticipated that, Your Honor. No objection.
And I know that there will be a family meeting to discuss how that looks for them. So we would just request the court to allow us to do that.
Deputy Ames, would you step out and invite Mr. Brooks back in? Because this concerns his client as well on parenting time.
I will, Your Honor.
We do have one other request, Your Honor, when the court would like to hear it. The petition states, and my client would state, that she was struck in the face with a can of food by the father. She would like the court to consider a no contact clause between the parents.
Are there bond conditions in any of the pending criminal matters that already address that?
My client indicates not for him, Your Honor.
It'd be just a
All right, thanks.
Your Honor, if I may interject on that point too, I mean, if Marlon's client feels like she's unsafe, she's more than able to seek a PTO.
And that's something that should be seeking assistance from the family team meeting or a worker to help her obtain that, Your Honor. Yes. But in the interim, she would like that. So this court also has a recourse contempt that's broken.
Ms. Thomas, your position on that request?
I think that's appropriate, Your Honor.
Ms. Underwood, do you find that that would serve the interests of the children?
I do, yes.
Okay. Well, and certainly we'll have Mr. Brooks to ask about that as well. For this parent, so typically, if there's no overarching risk associated with it, we would look at parenting time 2 to 3 times a week. Obviously, balancing things like transportation and the burden on the policeman, as well as the child's health around mental health and visitation. But Mr. Farian, do you have any indication of what that's going to look like for mom?
The visitation?
Yes.
Not this time, no. I mean, it will be supervised as stated and at the department's discretion.
There is one child who's a severe autistic child. She would also like to be invited to school and medical functions that might be for all the children, especially.
That's typically part of the case services plan.
I believe it is, but there may be some appointments prior to this position, so that's what we're bringing that up.
I think we're gonna, if anybody has it, Christy Brinker's information, if we pass it along to mom so that she can communicate directly with her as soon as possible, I think that would be the easiest way to make sure that those messages get communicated, frankly. Mr. Perry, do you have her information?
I do not, but I can acquire it rather quickly, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, we'll count on you to do that then before you take off today.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Mr. Brooks, the position of the department on parenting time is to abide by what is typical in a situation, and as I understand it, that would be supervised parenting time for your client.
That is no surprise to me at all.
Very well. I think in that situation as well, it could be explored to do some therapeutic supervised parenting time for your client. I know
That's
that
fine.
there's some, we had a sidebar before we got started. I know there's some significant friction between your client and the department, so it may be appropriate to ask an outside person to conduct that parenting time.
My client wants the help, Your Honor.
Okay,
It
great.
may not, in first impression, based on what I've told you, think he's opposed, but he's not.
Your Honor,
Your
I
Honor,
would
if I-
ask that parenting time with dad and the oldest child who has a different, he's with his mom right now, that parenting time be suspended until the child has been assessed with maybe a parenting time evaluation or some type of therapeutic parenting time, as there is additional issues between that child's mom and dad. I think it'd be in the child's best interest that some type of evaluation be done prior to any parenting time.
Did you have something you wanted to add, Ms. Thomas, before I respond to that?
Yes, Your Honor, as it relates to Mr. King, I believe that it would be appropriate to suspend parenting time pending a parenting time evaluation, given the pervasiveness of the domestic violence, especially in front of the children, the lack of regard for their well-being. I think that there's also some mental health issues that really need to be sussed out in this matter for the benefit of the children. So we just asked that we be permitted to conduct the parenting time evaluation before moving forward on parenting time with Mr. King.
May I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, this position puts me in a rather difficult position in that we're treating the mother in one way and my client in the other. I will remind the court, and I'm not in any way trying to attack the mother, but it is she who is charged with domestic violence, not he. And he is in the mood to cooperate with people. And while I guess the term would be, I'd like to see a strike while the iron's hot, and denying him visitation while granting it to the mother is not going to assist anyone in this matter in moving forward. So I ask that the court not agree or order the recommendations of Ms. Thomas or the GAL at this time. If it turns out it doesn't work out well, that's another matter, another hearing for another day, which will be coming up shortly anyway. But don't make distinctions between the parenting time that my client gets and the parenting time the mother gets. Thank you.
Your Honor, if I may clarify my position, I'm specifically seeking suspension of parenting time between Mr. King and his oldest son who has been placed with a non-respondent mother who is the custodial parent.
No.
And so that's what I'm clarifying the suspension on, because there's a lot of issues going on with that particular case. And I do believe the oldest child could potentially be taken off the petition once we're able to iron out issues with custody and parenting time in their family court file. But I would not be opposed to supervised time with the children between the two parties that are respondents.
Is there, Ms. Fullerton, would you mind coming to the podium? I have a couple questions that I think you might be able to answer. Deputy, would you swear in? As well as Mr. Ferry, in case I need to ask him any questions.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Ms. Fullerton, there was a bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, about Tranquil Studios. I think a couple months ago, and whether or not she has some kind of contract with DHS or not. I'm asking because specifically the issue that Ms. Underwood is raising is outlined in this petition as being an issue between two divorced parents. And Tranquil Studios, as I understand it, is the only service that we would have to address those particular dynamics.
I would have to look. I know that we were using them previously, but I feel like there was an issue with payment or we don't have a specific contract, but I feel like there was something to do with the payment. We certainly could research that
Yes.
and see if that would be an option.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask. Does anyone have any follow-up questions on my questions of Ms. Fullerton?
No,
No.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Mr. Farian, can you put that referral in and just see where it goes?
Yes, Your
For
Honor.
Tranquil Studios, as well as a parenting time assessment for
Sure.
both parents,
Yes, Your Honor.
before you relinquish your obligations on the case.
Yes, ma'am.
Normally I would ask Ms. Smith, but, or Brinker, I'm sorry, but she's not with us this morning, so I'm gonna ask you to make sure that it gets done right away. Okay, I'm not going to suspend parenting time at this moment. The child that Ms. Underwood is concerned about certainly will be subject to a parenting time evaluation, but I would also note that he's been living with his dad for the last 3 months. And I think that there is certainly a bond there. I will say, though, that parenting time for both parents will be supervised, should include some therapeutic parenting time. So we'll need another referral on that one. And I will be specific in the order that if there are any indications of coaching, inappropriate behavior, or aggression, even aggressive behavior, verbally or physically, then those workers will have the right to terminate that parenting time immediately. And I trust them also to bring me a motion immediately to suspend parenting time if either of you take advantage of that or something. Frankly, I'm worried about the kids. And if something more traumatic happens during parenting time, then I'm not doing my job to make sure that we're minimizing the problems that this causes your children. So don't be a problem. Just appreciate the time you have with your children, and we'll have a look at the case again at the pretrial and the initial disposition, which is December 20th at 9 o'clock in the morning.
thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All other prior orders remain in full force and effect. Unless there's any questions, that's all for this morning.
Reporting Nicole Underwood, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Ms. Stasia Thomas, counsel for the department.
Christy Brinker, foster care worker.
Michael Brooks, I present Mr. Dustin King.
Mr. McFarland?
Michael McFarland, representing mother, please introduce yourself.
Kirsten Miller, the mother.
All right, Ms. Underwood, I look forward to your report.
Mr. Honor, I was able to meet with all of the children. I intended to meet the youngest 3 in person. However, they've been very sick this week, so it was not appropriate for me to go in person. However, I did have a Zoom call with them for an extended period of time. They all seem to be doing well considering the fact that they're sick, but there's thriving in a routine and in a home that's got all of their basic needs met. They seem to have a good bond with their caregiver, and I did notice some speech delays just from talking to them, and I believe that was addressed in the court report and will likely be looked into as we move through this case. I had a nice conversation with Dustin Jr. this morning. He woke up with a big smile on his face and seems to be adjusting well. I know that was a bit of a traumatic removal for the children, but he seems to be doing very well where he's at. He's looking forward to going back to school in person. He's adjusting to being back in his home with his mom and his other siblings. And again, he's just really excited for Christmas. He talked to me about how he has this new morning routine that he's doing, and he just seems to be really well adjusted, and he wouldn't stop smiling when I talked to him, so that was good to see. I believe that they are in the least restrictive environments and should continue their placements.
Here, testimony this morning, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Honor. I'll call Ms. Brinker to give her report.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning, Ms. Brinker. Today you have prepared and filed a court report for the initial disposition, which includes the initial foster care report, 2 case service plans, one for Ms. Miller and one for Mr. King, and then an agreement or the expectations for parenting time. Is there anything else that you've circulated since you filed that report?
No.
Okay. And are there any updates or modifications that you're aware of that need to be made to that report or the attachments?
I will be changing the request for visitation, but we can probably cover that maybe later with testimony, or I didn't know if you wanted to go through that now or.
Okay, we can address that later if that's the only update. Okay, thank you. Okay, today we are only here for, well, the report, I guess, relates only to the initial disposition for Ms. Miller. At this time, what is the children's permanency goal?
The permanency goal currently is reunification.
And what are the current barriers to the children being reunified with their mother?
Lack of housing, probably some parenting. None of the services have been started yet. Ms. Miller she did start and go get an assessment for a mental health evaluation and has started doing that in counseling, but services have just started within this case.
So she has taken on some voluntary services to date.
Correct.
Okay. I know in the report there are mentions of referrals being made. Can you just briefly highlight what services referrals still need to be made for?
I believe that my supervisor was actually handling the referrals, and I think that all of the referrals noted in the report still need to be made, which would be the trauma assessments for the kids and the psychological evaluation for Ms. Miller.
Okay. As relates to the case service plan, did you have an opportunity to meet with Ms. Miller to develop that case service plan?
Yes, we had an FTM on December 6th, and we went over the case service plan as well as the visitation plan, and she was in agreement and signed off on both.
And do you believe that the case service plan would adequately address the conditions that cause the children to come into care?
I do.
What is the current parenting time schedule for Ms. Miller?
Yeah, so currently she visits with the children 2 hours a week, twice a week at our office for 1 hour visits.
Okay, and it's supervised by Fostering Solutions then?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Can you, I know this is in your report, so I'm sorry for asking you to be redundant here, but can you just highlight and verbalize what some of the concerns for parenting time with Ms. Miller are?
The kids, gosh, it's really it's hard to put into words, their behaviors. They definitely have a hard time adjusting, especially Lincoln has a really hard time. So I think that, coming to a new place, our office, they are wild, run through our office. They don't listen to their mom. They don't listen to our staff. Our staff has been spit on, kicked. They run through our building. They have attempted to run into the parking lot. It's just chaos, for lack of a better word. Miss Miller could benefit from parenting, some more parenting classes to help to control her children. A lot of times she kind of just sits back and doesn't address the behaviors as they're going on, and lets our staff kind of handle it. So that's in a nutshell.
And you mentioned earlier in your testimony that you would be changing your request for parenting time. Is that regarding Ms. Miller?
Well, we're just kind of going to change the structure, I think, just to lessen the trauma for the kids. She did attend a medical appointment, as Ms. Underwood had stated. The kids have been really sick this week, and they've been to the doctors twice this week to urgent care. And she went with them for a 3-hour visit and sat with them at urgent care this week. And she seems to do, the kids, I mean, do better with her, but they also do very well with the placement and listening to the placement. And we think that it would lessen the trauma to the children. So we're going to be moving the visits with the mom to the placement's home to kind of cut down on the trauma there, and then have mom go to the home and then gauge and see if that helps out with the children's behaviors.
Would Fostering Solutions still be supervising, or would supervision be left to the relative placement?
We would still supervise as well to assess what's needed.
And are any other services like, I know sometimes we utilize like Orchard supportive visitation. Are there any services like that that are going to be utilized for Ms. Miller?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other concerns that you have about this family, or that you need court assistance with outside of the case service plan?
Obviously, the domestic violence is a big part of this case. So I know that, I mean, it's of course a lot of hearsay of dad threatening mom, and both back and forth kind of, we're passing amongst friends, relatives, whatever. Also, dad has been driving by the children's placement and honking their horn and stopping his truck in front of the placement, and causes craziness amongst the placement's home. She has a video of it, has sent me pictures and video of that occurring. So I don't know specifically what can be done, because I do think that a PPO has been put in place, but just the threatening behaviors by the paternal father at this point is concerning.
Do you happen to have a copy of the PPO?
I do not.
Okay. Have you spoke with Ms. Miller about what she would like protection from, or if there's anything in our court that we can do to supplement the PPO?
She has not indicated anything extra.
Okay.
I mean, she asked, but just she continues to tell me about incidents that are occurring, but she has not asked for anything specific.
Do you believe that Ms. Miller is taking the appropriate steps to safeguard herself from engaging in additional cycles of domestic violence at this point in time?
I still have concern that she resides with the neighbors that are next door to where Mr. King is staying. So that's of concern, but short of that, I do believe that she is taking the appropriate steps.
Is there anything else as relates to Ms. Miller and the initial disposition that you would like the court to know?
No.
Okay. For Mr. King, we are here on a pretrial basis, which I know typically wouldn't involve you, but as it relates to his parenting time and how the children are doing with him, can you just briefly summarize what's happening?
Yeah, so basically the same thing that I discussed, how the children react with mom are escalated probably tenfold. On top of that, we have Mr. King makes comments to our staff saying that, you know, if you think I can't parent my kids, you can do it. And he sits back and just lets this stuff occur, which is where the biting happens. He just makes inappropriate comments, talks about the mom to the kids.
I can't listen to her. Listen to her. I can't do it.
So makes inappropriate comments to the kids and our office staff, and makes untrue or perceived like allegations of what's going on with the kids.
I know in your report you have an example of that. and for the benefit of anyone who did not read it carefully, can you just give us an example or two of what you're referring to? Dad making statements that are untrue or his perception is not based in
Sure.
reality.
So the most telling, so yesterday we had an FTM with him, and he started off by the FTM by saying that he doesn't like how our agency is abusing his children, and in attempts to redirect the children to keep them in the room or to keep them safe, our staff members, had grabbed the children from behind, maybe grabbed them by the arms. And he said, trunk only, trunk only. And so then when she picks them up by the trunk and they touched her, and he said, oh, her private parts are touching you, that's inappropriate. So that kind of comments are what's going on during visits from Dad. So on top of keeping the 3 children that are very active during visits, our staff is also having to deal with the constant scrutiny of Dad. He also was videoing during the last visit. So.
And currently, what is his parenting time arrangement?
His parenting time arrangement is currently the same as Mom's, where he visits twice a week, 1 hour.
Okay. And are you asking for a change in his parenting time today?
Yes. Due to yesterday, the FTM and our attempt to go over the parent visitation rules, and we couldn't even get past Rule 2 of the expectations of behavior, and just due to the continued risk and trauma to the kids, we are recommending that visits with Dad be suspended until the kids can have their trauma assessments completed and Dad have his psychological evaluation completed, so that we know how to best go forward with therapeutic visits.
I know that you've testified to some of the things that the children are experiencing during parenting time. And I know that it's really hard for all of us who aren't present to really understand how severe these behaviors are. But one of the the court must find that parenting time poses a risk of harm to the children's physical health or emotional or psychological well-being. Are there, can you elaborate on that, whether there is the physical risk or the harm to, a risk of harm to their physical health or psychological or emotional well-being? And if anything is happening after parenting time that also supports that?
Yeah, so part of it, none of the kids had been really potty trained prior to coming into the home. And the placement had been working with the kids. And when I saw them after initial placement, she was very proud, and they were very proud because they were showing me the stickers that they were getting on the wall because they were using the toilet and no longer having to use pull-ups, and had making great progress. After the visit last Thursday night, Lincoln came, the 5-year-old came home and looked right at the placement as she was putting the 18-month-old to bed, and he pulled down his pants and he just pooped right next to the crib. So just right on the floor. I mean, after potty training had been going on for almost a month now, and he had been making progress. So that's just one example of what happens. And I have to stress that the behaviors are so different. When I first met the kids in the placement, they were they were excited to see me, a new person. But I mean, what occurs at parenting visits and what occurs at that placement, those kids are night and day. Like, it is, I can't even, we struggled writing the court report because it's so hard to articulate the behaviors that those kids exhibit. They're just wild. Yeah. And just attacking people, kicking, biting, punching, and that behavior does not happen at the placement.
Okay. And then as it relates, there's another child who's with a non-respondent mother at this point in time. Has there been any parenting time with that child for Mr. King?
There has not.
Is that mother cooperative with the agency?
She initially refused, and again, kind of the same thing with him. When I first met him, a couple days into the case, he was adamant that he wanted to be back with his dad, be back with his siblings. He did not want to be with his mom. And then when I went and saw him on Wednesday, he was, again, just a different little boy. He had adjusted back to being in placement. Again, smiling, happy to see me, you know, and then he sent me a text and said, you know, I know that I can't be with my dad. I would like to see him. And I know it's, you know, I can't be with him, but again, just a different kid. So initially, mom was very hesitant to allow him to attend parenting visits for the first 2 weeks, just because she wanted him to get adjusted. And then the visit, we did have one scheduled with them where he was supposed to come, but then the kids ended up getting sick. So that did not occur.
Are you asking parenting time to be suspended for that child as well, pending trauma assessment, psychological?
I do feel like that would be in the best interest for his well-being, yes.
And I know, I believe that in your court report you indicated there have not been any sibling visits. Is that something that the agency is trying to work with the caregivers on?
Yes, of course. Yep.
Is there anything else that you feel the court should know about how the children are doing and how this case is progressing?
Again, I feel like it's well documented in the court report, but also, as Ms. Underwood said, there's definitely delays with the kids. As the placement said, you know, they came in not really using utensils, using their hands to eat, and yeah, they're just very delayed. I mean, I've seen it, our GAL has seen it, the pediatrician has seen it, the fact, I think that I had to read the report from the pediatrician because he applied fluoride, and I've never heard of a pediatrician applying fluoride before, but he was so concerned for the children's dental health that he took it upon himself to apply fluoride in the pediatrician's office. So just the neglect of the kids are, yeah.
And during this, I guess, between the removal on November 22nd and today, there was, I believe your report indicates that Mr. King was incarcerated for another instance of domestic violence against Ms. Miller. Is that accurate?
I believe it was the incident dating back to what caused the actual removal of the kids, where he allegedly had thrown a can of green beans at her.
Okay, so it wasn't it wasn't a new placement or a new instance.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And today are you asking the court to consider entering an order prohibiting any harassing behaviors from Mr. King to agency staff and placement?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. With it, I have no further questions of Ms. Brinker and move to admit the court report with the attachments that are included. Thank you.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection. Okay, the only attachments I see really are the case services plans. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say, there's just at the end of the end of the packet is a parenting expectation.
Yes, I see that. Thank you. There was at the preliminary hearing an indication of Native American heritage. Are you aware of any updates on that piece?
I have not received any updates currently. The CPS worker is here though. Okay. I can probably speak to that. So
thank you so much. Were there any instances where you had to use the language granted in the prelim order that allowed the termination of parenting time based on aggressive or other dangerous behaviors during parenting time?
The staff thought that it would possibly escalate the behaviors with dad, so they chose to not utilize that due to the behavior that we were already seeing from him. So I thought that it was better to just work through the
Okay, thank you for that insight. Questions, Mr. McFarland?
My understanding is that the Aspen charged a felony for a third offense, domestic violence, and has a preliminary hearing scheduled. Am I correct?
I am not completely current with his most recent court criminal proceedings.
My client has advised me that the PPO is actually being filed today. Is it our presumption you would like a copy of the
Yes,
PPO?
please.
Would in addition you like to have this court order that father not be around mother, not be around placement, not have any contact, therefore we can utilize contempt of court proceedings in this?
Correct, please, thank you.
How?
Mr. King, you're gonna need to keep it down, please. Your volume is at the point where it's
I
somewhat,
can't hear, sorry.
okay, well,
Shut up. That's what she said.
we just need to make sure that I can hear and that the other attorneys can hear as well.
Expansion of my client's parenting time. What are we looking at to expand it? And if expanded, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think we already kind of expanded a little bit this week with the extra sick visits and the doctor's appointments. But yeah, I think we feel comfortable with supported parenting, that as long as she is engaging and moving forward with filing for the domestic violence, the PPO, and engaging in the parenting classes and recommendations, we're comfortable with adding on parenting time.
My client's advised me that she's attempted to seek residency at the shelter or at the Catherine Cox shelter, but they are full. Is there some maybe active assistance the agency could give her to assist her in relocating?
I believe that we have also attempted to contact the shelter and are looking at other options for her as well. Yes, we did discuss that during the FTM.
Lastly, where should her principal focus be right now? If we were to, because she has a full plate of things that she has to do, where should her principal focus be?
I definitely,
is.
I do feel like she has taken the right step with her mental health, and I think that that's probably the principal focus at this time.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
Are these special needs children or any one of them special needs?
I believe Lincoln, the oldest, is, although I have not received any of the documentation for that yet.
I need you to speak a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. I believe the oldest child does have an autism diagnosis.
Autism?
I believe I have not seen documentation, and that is what was reported.
And the other ones?
There are no diagnoses on file.
How old are they?
18 months and 4 and 5.
They're extremely young for trying to do any kind of evaluation, aren't they?
Trauma assessments, and early on assessments are definitely tailored to younger children.
I believe, if I can summarize your impression, that these children are unsocialized. Is that a fair
That would be a very fair summary, yes.
And since they have been, are they in foster homes or are they in relative care?
They are in a relative placement.
Have there been improvements?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned something about aggression by my client towards caseworkers. Has that been your experience? Has my client been aggressive towards you?
I have not dealt with your client on one-on-one. It has been our staff members at the agency.
Have you heard of other ones where he is claimed to have been aggressive towards them?
Yes.
In what way?
Verbally.
In other words, he doesn't agree with what they're saying.
Yes.
I was at that family team meeting yesterday, and I saw what you're talking about. But when we say he was aggressive, would argumentative been just as accurate a statement?
I feel he's very accusatory, and his accusations are probably not very realistic. So.
And he has a psychological evaluation scheduled, or where are we at? Are we even at that stage where the court can order that for him?
We, I believe, are going to be at that stage, or I believe that is what today is that he will be ordered into a evaluation.
Okay.
We are currently seeking a provider.
I'm a little confused because I think the parents are in different stages of their.
They are. Technically, today is a pretrial for your client, Mr. Brooks. There's a bench trial scheduled in January.
All right. That makes it clear. Does my client have a home he could take his children to?
He does not.
Do you know, to your knowledge, whether or not he's working on that?
I believe he has reported that he's working on tearing down a trailer for them to have a place to live. I'm not sure, he has not indicated where, but it's something with his mother, I think, or on his mother's property.
Tearing down a trailer?
Or moving a trailer. Yeah.
But you haven't seen it or anything?
No.
Do you know where my client lives?
I believe in Morenci.
I mean, does he have a place that he stays?
I believe that it's his mother's home that is condemned, where the children were removed.
Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Ms. Underwood?
Do you believe that, I believe Dustin Jr. has a cell phone. I am aware I've had some contact with him on that. Do you believe that phone contact with Mr. King and Dustin Smith and Jr. is appropriate?
I do not.
Are there any other issues with either parent that have not specifically been addressed that are concerning in your experience?
I think everything's been covered.
You indicated that early on referrals have been made or they will be made?
Yes, I believe they're scheduled for January.
I have no further questions, thank you.
All right. There was also at the last juncture, part of the order was that both parents were to be referred for parenting time assessment and a Tranquil Studios evaluation. Can you tell me if there's any progress on those pieces?
I know that we have reached out to Tranquil Studios. I believe there was an issue with funding, I think.
All right. What about a parenting time assessment? Is that something that's been explored or considered?
Through an agency? So through separate from us?
Just in general, whether it's through you or maybe the CPS worker?
Yeah, absolutely. We can, I mean, I feel like we've done that over the past month, kind of assessed the needs, but the Orchards referral will definitely cover the parenting time and focus on what specific tasks need to be completed.
Is there a trauma assessment on the horizon for the children?
Yes.
All right. That typically has bonding assessment. Would you be willing to ask that provider also to weigh in on parenting time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Redirect, Ms. Thomas.
Not at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any more questions, Mr. McFarland?
Just briefly, you are in possession of my client's PPO against father, correct?
I think she said no.
No, that was the PPO from the foster parent.
Oh.
Oh, I don't know that I have that.
So you would like her to present that to the agency also?
Please, thank you.
Mine, so I guess, are you aware that there's been some violations of this current PPO alleged by my client?
Yes.
She's seeking a violation of the PPO hearing. You're aware of that?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
She does communicate well and let me know when there's incidences that have occurred.
She'll present that to you then. Nothing further.
Mr. Brooks, any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Underwood?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony. May I return to your seat? Any other witnesses, Ms. Thomas?
Not for purposes of the initial disposition, Your Honor.
Any testimony today from anyone
This is not really the
regarding the
time
initial
that-
disposition, Mr. McFarland?
Yeah, perhaps it would speed this up. Is there a no contact order between the parents right now?
Yes,
I'd like to call my client.
very well.
Before we do, Your Honor, my client has on several occasions here this morning asked to talk to me. May I have a very short recess?
You may, Mr. Brooks. It's technically the initial disposition as it relates to Ms. Kirsten Miller. Would you like us to recess or would you like to simply step out with your client?
I can step out with my client, that's fine.
Very well, thank you so much. Go ahead. All right, Ms. Kirsten Miller, come on up to our witness stand.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Or just step to the chair.
How would you like me to address you today?
Kirsten.
Okay. You've indicated to me that father's had some contact with you. Is that correct?
Through a third party.
What has that contact been?
It's been through my friend's niece.
What was the content of that contact?
Asking who I've been with. He thinks I'm having sexual intercourses with other people, that I'm on drugs, that I'm just not doing what I'm supposed to do, which I'm doing, as you heard from the foster worker, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
And have you shared these texts with the workers?
I just brought the pictures up this morning I meant to take them to the second floor, but I took them to the third floor and they were supposed to bring them here.
Okay. Do you have those on your phone?
No, they're on my friend's phone, but they should have brought them to her because she's the judge on.
Well, you're talking, you presented the documents upstairs to the clerk's office. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
And you present a copy to the worker and to myself, so we have
Yeah, I
those.
can.
Oh.
I'll just have to go home and get them. I don't have them.
And you've already contacted police on that?
Yes, they said you have to record everything.
Oh, do they have a copy of the text messages?
Yes, we sent them to them.
So you say they're upstairs right now?
Yeah, they were supposed to bring them down here some point today.
Can I inquire if the court has a copy of those that may have been improperly filed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor. I would like maybe to take a 5-minute break and get those, since you would like to hold father in contempt for violating the court orders. I'd at least like to present that to the court. I just discovered their existence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll take a brief recess then. I would encourage you to contact my assistant to see if he can help you with finding things.
I will do that forthwith right now.
Ms. King, you have been reminded, but I'm just going to remind you on the record, you remain under oath. Mr. McFarland?
Just to let the court know, I did locate the documents which were filed upstairs. I'm not going to use them today, and I have no further questions.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions for this witness, beginning with Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
Ms. Underwood? Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seats. Anyone else you'd like us to hear from for purposes of the initial disposition, Mr. McFarland?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Underwood?
I have no witnesses.
Very well. As it relates to comments that you may have on the initial disposition, Ms. Thomas, and I think we do need to address the Native American heritage piece for not only for both parents, really.
Yes, Your Honor. I believe that it was Ms. Miller who indicated some Cherokee heritage. I believe that the ICWA documentation has been sent out. I do not have return green cards at this point in time, but it is something that the department is going to be following up on. If you would like testimony from, I believe Ms. Kelly or Mr. Farian would be the individuals to ask. But based on my review of my file, I am confident that's where we are.
All right, I just need copies of the inquiries, the certified mail receipts, and any green cards or letters that are returned. So it's just, I'd love to have them as soon as possible so I can stop asking.
Okay. Yes, Your Honor. I know that we are still in the pretrial phase for Mr. King, but Judge, I think we need some court oversight here in a few regards. So one, I guess, as relates to the initial disposition for mom, we are asking the court to adopt that case service plan and enter it as an order today. We are also asking the court to order that the children undergo a trauma and bonding assessment. Per policy, the children need a screening level, the trauma screening level of 11 or higher, and they also need to be engaged in services that are not working. Given that the children are young, they don't have a history of services. We just need that order to ensure we can get that referral done. I believe that the bonding assessment would be sufficient to address recommendations on parenting time. At this time, we are asking the court to suspend Mr. King's parenting time. I believe that his behavior, and I frankly have recommended to the agency to stop parenting time. There was some concern about the language in our prior order, whether it meant that each parenting time could be suspended or that all parenting time could be suspended based on any dangerous or concerning behaviors. But I am asking at this point that all parenting time with Mr. King be suspended for all of the children, that no contact be there pending the return from the trauma assessment and bonding assessment. We do understand that obviously during the bonding assessment, there would have to be contact. I think that it would be prudent of our team to confer with the team providing the assessment to ensure safety measures are put in place, whether that's having law enforcement on a standby or additional hands there to assist with the children. Furthermore, we are asking, I know that both Ms. Miller and placement are dealing with PPOs in their own regard, but with this court having jurisdiction over the children through Ms. Miller and the removal, we are asking the court to also make that part of the order that there's no contact period, that dad is not to harass, contact, or in any way threaten the children, the caregivers, or mom. And we would also ask the court to order dad to be respectful to the workers. I think frankly, their job description doesn't include having to deal with such accusatory and argumentative behavior from parents. It is not our caseworkers' fault that the children are in care, rather the parents, and is the responsibility to address those conditions that cause the children to come into care. And there should be some appreciation for the people who are caring for their children and making sure that they have a warm, safe home, food, clothing, and their medical needs are met. As relates to the pretrial, Your Honor, and I think that this is also relevant moving forward in the case, we're asking the court to additionally enter a protective order that would allow us to bifurcate court reports and to eliminate the contact information for Ms. Miller. I think given the severity of the domestic violence that this family has endured, the behaviors by Mr. King, that is also prudent. And if this court is so inclined, I know that there are some concerns about whether some of the behaviors that are very concerning from Mr. King are induced by any drugs or substances. We would ask the court to order him to undergo a drug screen today before leaving. Thank you.
Please stop with the behaviors, Mr. King. They are disruptive to our proceedings. Thank you. Comments in closing, Mr. McFarland.
We support the position of the agency, and my client wants to be ordered into the case service plan.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks. Any comments today?
Well, this is not technically about my client, but there's been a lot of ground covered here, all negative about my client, and they want to cut off his parenting time. And my only response to that is I have, at the family team meeting, witnessed the lack of effective communication between my client and the department. And I appreciate, and I've explained to my client how irritating it is, his habit of absolutely talking over people at every sentence they say. I get that. I have the same reaction. However, that is not the same as talking to kids who are the age of his kids. And he is not arguing, I'm sure, with his children, particularly about anything involving this case. Dad, I think we should be in foster care, and I mean, they're not saying stuff like that. They're not saying that Dad's got issues of his own. And I don't think there's been any evidence of him threatening his children at visitations, either verbally, certainly not physically. And I don't agree that he should be cut off from his visitations. Is he irritating? He is. He knows he's irritating. And I've told him that in plain English. But I don't think it has anything whatsoever to do with his kids. It has to do with his inner relationships with the outside world. And his personality can be grating. I admit it. He'll admit it. But he's not dangerous to his kids.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Underwood?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I would echo the words of Ms. Thomas. In general, I believe that it would be appropriate at this time to request drug testing today. I would say it's reasonable for both parents to be tested. I don't think it would hurt anything, and I think it would provide some insight as to what is happening in this case. With respect to parenting time for Mr. King, I think it is appropriate to suspend visits based on his conduct, not only today in the courtroom, but also in the family team meeting. I was very clear yesterday that we couldn't get anywhere during that meeting because of his behavior and his lack of consideration for others. And it absolutely does harm the children if he's doing those, if he's expressing and displaying those behaviors toward others in the presence of his kids. There has also been testimony that Mr. King has been inappropriate with the things that he is saying, talking about the case, and not respecting the parenting time guidelines that had been attempted to be relayed to him at family team meetings. There's a lack of accountability on his part. Mr. King doesn't believe he did anything wrong and that it's everybody else's fault. And I think that it's clear that, again, these children need a safe place that is free from his inappropriate behaviors until they can be addressed. So I believe that parenting time, it's appropriate that parenting time for Dad be suspended until a psych evaluation happened for him and also bonding and trauma assessments happen with the kids. I also believe it's appropriate with respect to the oldest child, that those visits be, if they are to be ordered, that they be supervised very closely and that there not be any discussion with respect to this court case or anything happening during that time. I would also ask that phone contact be eliminated or closely monitored if it were to be ordered. I had spoken with the placement, and there have been at least 2 instances where Mr. King has driven by her home and either revved the engine very loud and then peeled off, or went by honking the horn and just disrupting the children in the placement. I believe it'd be appropriate for a no contact order to be entered in this case, wherein Mr. King's not to make any contact or follow or even drive by the home of the placement in order to protect the children and the placement who is opening her home, or they're opening their home to these children and helping provide stability and consistency for them during this traumatic time. Thank you.
The court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of the pretrial as it relates to Mr. King's case and the initial disposition as it relates to Ms. King's case. As it relates to the disposition, the court's reviewed the case services plan. I do find it appropriate and it will be part of today's court order. The no contact between the parents will remain in place. We'll look for Ms. Miller to continue to engage with her parenting time and the needs of the children and her case services as she has been, as also to continue looking for housing and some other indications of stability that would alleviate the risk of harm associated with returning the children to her care. There's also clearly a need for some parenting education, observation of the bond between the mother and the child, trauma assessments to identify any additional limitations that children may have, as well as additional services that may be useful to them based on the information that I've read in the court report and listened to on the record today. The children were feral, to be frank. They were unfamiliar with bathing showers, eating food with silverware. As Ms. Brinker described, also the placement described in the report, kicking it, biting, uncontrollable behavior. Use of silverware was foreign to them as well. Potty training is an issue. So these children have clearly demonstrated very obvious indications that they have been raised outside like animals, frankly, and it has caused them a lot of real problems that are going to continue to be real problems as they move into the next phase of life, which is a formal education setting. It's imperative that Ms. Miller show us that she is willing to dedicate the next 6 to 9 months to finding a stable environment and learning how to raise her children in a way that will allow them to be successful in our culture and in our climate, frankly. It's snowing this morning on my way in, right? There's a lot of traffic out there. There are very practical implications for a lot of the things that we've observed here, and it's been obviously very difficult for caseworkers, for the placement, and for everyone who's tried to support this family. I have 2 additional bailiffs in the courtroom this morning based on the dynamics that are being observed in the courtroom this morning. So I can only imagine that the behavior and what we're seeing, what the caseworkers are seeing, during parenting time, Ms. Brinker's only been able to describe, I'm sure, the tip of the iceberg as it relates to that. I want to express appreciation for the placement in supporting the children and in sharing with the court and the attorneys what's been happening with them at home so that we can best support you as you try to support the children. I'm going to allow the agency to have discretion as it relates to parenting time for Ms. Miller. So what that means is you are free to utilize your twice weekly parenting time if you need to, but you are also free to reduce that if the children's behaviors, if they can't handle it, frankly, and they're clearly communicating with their behavior, and they need to be able to have some time to stabilize. Mom needs some time to work on her case services and to educate herself. She's heavily reliant clearly on the supports at parenting time, and understandably so. These children are very much, and they have very much associated we'll call them feral behaviors with their parents because they've been isolated, it seems, from many aspects of society. So it doesn't surprise me, frankly, that we're seeing a lot of these behaviors come out the second they see their parents, and that because of that isolation that they had with their parents and now they're in a completely different environment, that they're able to adapt there. It also speaks to the resiliency of the children and the hope that we can have that they will be able to learn how to function appropriately and keep themselves out of many of the issues that their parents are currently experiencing. That, of course, includes the domestic violence indicators present in the case as well. There are also indications in the court report of use of drugs. So at a minimum, we have one of the children reporting that dad at least blew smoke in his face in order to help him get to sleep at night. I am going to ask both parents to drug test today before they leave. We'll reach out to the pretrial services officer upstairs for purposes of Mr. Kane's drug test, and we'll ask the case services worker to administer the test as it relates to Ms. Miller, because there simply are, I want to make sure that we are looking at all angles in this case, and there are indications that drugs may be a part of the dynamic, and it wouldn't certainly be surprising in a dynamic where you have domestic violence and many other regular hardships to have the use of substances as a way to cope with that, to be perfectly frank. So both parents will be asked to order 2 drug tests today. That's also to ensure that we have safety measures in place around that piece. Obviously, drugs, at a minimum, in layman's words, reduce the inhibitions that people may have in making decisions. And where you have these types of dynamics, where you have aggression, domestic violence, we don't need that kind of risk, running that kind of risk amplified by use of substances, whether it's in the courthouse or during visitation or anywhere else for that matter. So for those reasons, both parents are ordered to drug test today. As it relates to the pretrial, certain aspects, obviously, of today's court order are going to apply to Mr. King. His bench trial is scheduled for January 17th, 2022 at 3:30 p.m. That will remain as scheduled. I'll expect you to be ready to proceed on that date and time for purposes of determining jurisdiction. In the meantime, based on many of the observations already made, I am granting the department's request to suspend parenting time for Dustin King until the bench trial. In the meantime, I would like to see a referral made for a trauma assessment, frankly, for all 4 children. That includes the oldest child that is placed with his mother. I'd like to see the dynamic between him and his father as well for purposes of the bonding assessment. So I will need Mr. King to be involved with the trauma assessments as it relates to his children so that they can assess that bond and what that looks like appropriately. And I'll ask you to also ask those providers to weigh in on any parenting time recommendations as they may feel comfortable doing. If they're not, then I'll ask you to find someone else to do a parenting time recommendation. If you find that, again, the behaviors that the children are exhibiting, their need for stability, considering their circumstances where they come from, and coupled with fathers' continuously disruptive behavior during parenting time, contributes to a real high risk for these children. A risk that clearly mirrors the risk of harm associated with returning the children to the care of the father at this time. Both parents continue to remain without housing, employment, or many of the other services that are many of the other items that contribute to a safe and stable environment. And then, of course, you have all of the parenting time, the parenting dynamics or the lack of skills in those areas, as well as the very clear indications of domestic violence, aggression, and other issues in the relationship. All of those risks remain. The children are in the least restrictive placements as of today, and they will remain there pending further court hearings. I will also grant the request of the department to issue an order indicating that Dustin King is prohibited completely from contacting or circling or any other means of harassment to the foster care placement, and I will take violations of that very seriously. Both parents will be subject to the no contact, meaning no contact from mom or dad to the other one. That will also be something that will be obviously have some consequences if that's violated, and I'll trust our service providers to bring that to my attention as necessary. I am also granting the department's request to isolate reports that may be provided during the course of services that are administered as it relates to Ms. Kirsten Miller. There's a pending admitted third offense domestic violence case here, which is a felony case. Very well documented instance of domestic violence dynamics here. Power and control dynamics that are happening. So there's no question that we need to isolate reports that one parent could use against the other or vice versa. So that will be something we'll trust our case worker to ensure happens. Of course, the attorneys would be able to review those, but certainly not pass those along to either client. We'll have our next review and permanency planning hearing, frankly, for Ms. Miller on March 10th, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. Again, the first regular review and permanency planning hearing for Ms. Miller will be March 10th, 2025 at 1:30 p.m. Did I address all of the things that you asked me to address, Ms. Thomas? You have a rather long list.
I did, Your Honor, and I really appreciate you taking the time to go through that again. I mean, it may be redundant, but just ensuring that father understands the need to be respectful towards the agency and the caseworkers. I know that oftentimes our caseworkers don't feel that they have any remedy if parents are rude, argumentative, accusatory. And so I just would ask for either the order to reflect that or some guidance from the court about how the workers can feel more protected, I guess.
If it's a danger to meet with Mr. King or it's counterproductive, then really this is going to come back to you, Mr. King, because right now the goal is reunification.
Correct.
And I understand that we don't have an adjudication yet and you're not ordered to cooperate with anything. But you're going to make it a lot harder for me to understand that it's appropriate for me to return the children to your care if you can't even conduct yourself like an adult with other adults in the room.
Just been trying to let it.
I don't need to hear anything from you right now, Mr. King. I think that's part of the problem that you have. You seem to have an opinion on things at all times, and it would be very beneficial to you if you could sit back and perhaps just listen at times. I wish you the best of luck in doing that moving forward. Unless there's any other questions, that's all for today. All right, we are on record this afternoon pursuant to a request for a bench trial filed by Mr. Dustin King. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Good afternoon, Nicole Underwood, lawyer guardian ad litem for the minor children. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department.
Christopher Farian for the department.
Michael Brooks, I represent the respondent, Dustin King. Mr. King.
Dustin King, the father.
Thank you.
of the minor.
Counselors, thank you. Counselors, any opening statements?
No.
Yeah, I'll waive. I'll waive opening.
Okay, let's get into testimony then. Your first witness, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would call Deputy Rincon to the stand at this time.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We are on YouTube this afternoon. I thought we were a couple of participants on there. I thought I saw Ms. Madrid, so I just figured I'd let you know.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Deputy Jesse Rincon, be Jesserincon.
And Deputy Rincon, where are you employed?
Lumley County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been a deputy there?
A little over a year now.
Sorry, so you pull up my notes there. Deputy, do you recall an incident on November 21st, 2024 in Morenci, Michigan?
I do.
And to the best of your recollection, what were you called to that incident for?
I was called to the address of 10520 Hickory for a domestic assault that was called in by a third party.
And who were the alleged perpetrators or participants in the domestic assault?
The perpetrator would have been Dustin King Sr. and the victim was Kirsten Miller.
And what were the allegations against Mr. King at that
It's
time?
alleged that he used a can to assault Kirsten.
And did you, upon your arrival to the Hickory Street address, what did you observe?
When I arrived, I was unable to locate anybody immediately. We made contact with Sharon King and asked her to have Kirsten step out. And from there, she stepped out with the children. Well, two of the children. They came around the front of the home from the back. We were asked not to go in the back. So when she came around in front of the two children, neither of the two young children had coats on or shoes or socks to be they're barefoot. So.
Recall how the temperature or the weather that night?
I do. I believe I had central dispatch log the temperature at the time. I believe it's 38 degrees to the best of my knowledge. And it was extremely cold and windy and wet.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? I'm gonna The discovery, you're part of the police report dated 11/21.
I've seen them in black and white. I haven't seen them in color. You can look at them too.
Sorry, Deputy Record, I'm going to provide you with some pictures here. Yeah, I don't have a good way of showing the court or the photos. So this is gonna be a little clumsy, but I was just planning on asking him to identify what he saw, and then I asked the court to accept them as exhibits.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Underwood?
No objection.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
But can I ask one small favor? We move that device to the
Yes,
other
yes.
side of the lectern so I can see the witness.
Absolutely, sorry about that, Mr. Brooks. Deputy Rincon, those photos in front of you, do you recall, well, let me ask, do those photos in front of you look familiar?
Yes,
And why do they look familiar to you?
because I was the one that took them.
And can you please describe to me where you took those photos at?
I was at the residence that I was called to that night for the domestic assault on Hickory.
And is that the residence where Ms. Kirsten Miller had stepped from the back to the front with the two children?
Yes,
And this is the same residence where you observed the two children without coats, socks, or shoes?
yes.
Okay. And in those photos, well, can I ask, why did you take those photos?
Because I was extremely concerned for the welfare of the children and the living conditions that they were in, due to the temperatures and the unsuitable living conditions. I mean, I don't think anybody.
You were asked not to go into the backyard. Are those photos of the backyard?
Yep.
How did you gain access there?
Reason we went back the second time was we were trying to locate the suspect. We determined we had enough probable cause to go to the back of the home to attempt to locate him. That's all we went back there for. Aside from that, we went back there. As soon as I went back there, we were trying to locate him. I took these photos to show the living condition that the children were in, which that's what I just believe that I need to document it. So
What made you believe that the children were living there?
at one point, I spoke to one of the small children. I didn't have a name for him exactly at the time. And I asked him, I said, "Where are you living?" He goes, "Here. This is where we live." So
When you took those photos, were you able to locate any heat source for the?
no, I wasn't able to locate any heat source. I wasn't back there strictly for that, specifically for that. I went back there briefly, made a quick documentation. I did not step inside the tent once I determined Dustin King was not in there. Once that, we backed out, and that was the end of that.
Okay. In one of those photos, there's photos of a young child, and it looks like maybe the feet are being looked at, or with Ms. Miller there. Is that the condition that you found the other? If there were two children, is that the condition that both children were in?
Yes, in the one photo, you can see both children's feet. That was my main focus. It showed the most signs of being cold.
Now, you'd stated that you did not see Mr. King at this site, correct? What made you believe that he knew that his children were there?
That was his primary residence at the time. We were there. We dealt with him multiple times there, and we are called there. So I mean, we have a long call history there. And Kirsten, I believe, after a brief conversation with her, she knew that he was there. She just wouldn't tell us that Dustin King Jr. was there. So.
And at this time, I'm going to ask the court to accept these photos marked as petitioners 1 through 10, or if the packet wants to mark as petitioners 1, the court would like to do that.
1, that's fine. Objections?
I thought I already said no objection.
That's confirmed. Thank you. Record should reflect I have received the packet of photos. Thank you.
Deputy Rincon, you had just mentioned something that I didn't plan on asking, but you just stated that you're familiar with this residence. Can you give us a little more about how often you've been called to this residence?
Personally, I've been there probably 3 or 4 times myself. But if you review our call history with the central dispatch, I can't even count how many times we've been there. We're there all the time for whether it's domestics or civil issues regarding the children, the other mother.
So you were familiar with the parties involved, is that fair to say?
Yes, I will say that this is my first time meeting Dustin King, seeing him in person, because every time we respond to the home, he's never there. or at least unable to locate him at the time.
When you arrived, you were able to physically see Miss Kirsten Miller, correct?
Yes.
And did she have any marks on her body as a result of a can of vegetables being thrown at her?
Yes.
And can you describe what you saw?
Off the top of my head, no. I remember she had an injury that I documented. I didn't have enough time to review everything before getting here, but she did have an injury. I believe so it was best of my partner's observations would have came from the can.
Okay. And did she tell you how she had sustained that injury? Did she confirm the allegations?
She would not.
At that time, were you, I know that you mentioned you briefly spoke with one of the young children. Did you ask any of the children, I know they're all very young, but did you ask if they had seen Mr. King throw anything at Miss Miller? No. And as it relates to this incident, have you asked or have you submitted your report and asked for charges against Mr. King?
I have.
And what would those charges be?
And, I sent over domestic violence charges, and I believe it was authorized for domestic violence third offense. And
did you have any concern about child abuse or child neglect?
Yes, I did as well send over child abuse charges, which were then dropped.
Okay, thank you. When you saw the children, was there anything in particular other than them being dirty that really concerned you about their welfare?
As far as dirty, yes, I mean just their feet and their arms. I mean everything about them showed signs of cold trauma, being cold, extremely cold. The dirty, I mean I see dirty children every day. It's not my biggest concern whether or not they're dirty. It was the cold, the sheer cold out there. I was freezing them myself that night, so.
And I just want to kind of go back to those photos just to confirm for the record, because I don't know that I said this or that we established this. When you were in the back, what shelter did the family have for their living arrangements?
Yes, it was what I could best describe as like a 6-person tent, inside of which I briefly looked in just to see if there's anybody inside, which was a blow-up mattress. There's clothes and trash all over the floor with a layer of water over it, frozen, and there's trash everywhere. So that was all it was. There was no, to my quick peek in there was no signs of heat or anything. So.
And would you describe the conditions that you saw on the outside of the tents, so in the yard? And can you describe that a little bit?
Yes, I mean, I've seen hoarding, but this was more, it wasn't just hoarding, it was just trash everywhere, extremely dirty, unsuitable for anyone to be back there. There was metal and nails and trash everywhere. Those children running around barefoot, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Brooks?
What is the outcome of the domestic violence charge that you reported?
I have not followed up with that. I have not received any court documentation any further than when I knew the charges were authorized, and he was arrested at the Illinois County Sheriff's Office on the warrant.
All right. And the personal protection order that was filed by his significant other?
Again, I have no knowledge of a personal protection order.
Okay. Did you have, other than that initial visit and the photos you took, have you had any other involvement in this case beyond that? Stop it.
I mean, this direct incident, no. This direct incident, no. I've had other interactions with the home, yes, but none that relate directly to this case.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Ms. Underwood?
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Redirect?
I have none, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any reason we should not thank and excuse the deputy for his time?
No, Your Honor.
No, I have no objection.
No objection.
Thank you for your time and your testimony.
Thank you.
You are released. Your next witness?
Mr. King.
Okay, Mr. Dustin King, come on up to our witness stand.
Take it with you.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
afternoon, Mr. King.
Stephanie.
I'm going to ask you some really obvious questions, but I just have to ask them to establish record, okay?
What was the word?
I'm going to ask obvious or very basic questions, and it may seem silly, but I just have to establish it for the record, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you please state and spell your name?
Excuse me a minute. Sir, you're gonna have to speak up for me to be able to hear you.
All right.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Dustin King, Dustin
And Mr. King, do you have children?
Yes, I do.
And I know that we are streaming right now, so I'm not going to ask you to say their names, but how many children do you have?
4.
And what are their ages?
12, gonna be 13. Lincoln just turned 5, 3, and gonna be 2. My daughter.
Thank you. And who are the children? Do the children all have the same mother?
No, 3 of you.
Okay.
3 of the younger ones do, yes.
Okay. And who is their mother?
I want to say out loud. Kirsten Miller.
Okay. And who is the mother of the older child?
Jessica Adney.
Thank you. And I apologize. These are some of those silly
I
questions.
just don't like that it's on YouTube.
I understand that. I understand. And Mr. King, were you or are you currently in a relationship with Miss Miller?
Not currently, no.
When did that end? When did your relationship with her end?
When the stuff happened, it was kind of rocky in the last year and a half. Because of the living conditions in my health. The living conditions in the tent had just happened. I don't know when I can really speak on those things.
We'll get there if you can bear with me, okay? So just for clarification, the last date in which caused us to come to court was in November 2024.
Yes.
At that period of time, were you in a relationship with Miss Miller? Okay. Was that a yes?
Yes, that was.
And then since then, the relationship has terminated?
Yes.
And I'm just going to repeat this back. And in your opinion, it's terminated because the last year and a half, a lot has happened, some poor living conditions and your health?
I kept asking for help from you guys, from Family First, from Chris, from Brittany, from different workers, from Judge Shadler. We asked for a petition for Kirsten to get help, and I need, obviously in life, people's genes mutate and things happen. People need help. And our doctors don't want to tell us that. So I went and did it myself and figured it out. That's how I found out Lincoln has issues.
And so during your relationship with Miss Miller, and particularly since July, have you engaged in what we would call domestic violence? So arguing, fighting, being physically aggressive with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And do you ever have arguments with one another?
Like I told Bailey, John Bailey 10 years ago, I said, I can guarantee you one thing in this world, because his partner was a bartender. I said, I can guarantee you one thing in this world. I'll give you $100 on it and I'll shake on it. He said, I'm not going to do that. I said, everybody's going to argue. It doesn't matter whether you're a dog or a cat, human or kid, you're going to argue until you find a common ground. And violence is the key words are. I mean, I took classes, 70, 80 classes altogether. I know this.
When you and Miss Miller would argue, what did it look like? I think we all have different definitions of arguing. So if you can just articulate to us what it means to you.
It meant she didn't want to change.
Would there be yelling?
Just she needs help. We both do, honestly.
What do you need
because
help
of that?
with?
Maybe like to figure out why my genes mutated and not be gave up on by the Food and Drug Administration like I have. I mean, you guys are government entities. You should work together for us citizens. Like I was told that we were gonna get from Chris for $5,500 back rent, and all this stress was on me, you know, it basically about killed me in September. It's been a trajectory. I mean, it's not something I've ever wanted to have to live through or go through again in my life. I mean, I loved her to death, but I just, everything has to change no matter what.
Okay.
For my kids. No, they shouldn't be away from me somewhere else. They never really stayed overnight. Them things matter to me. Where
Mr. King, earlier you testified that you and Ms. Miller did not engage in aggressive behaviors towards one another. But have you ever been criminally charged for assaulting Ms. Miller?
you guys
I'm
wrote
going
a-
to object to the question. Appropriate question would be, has he ever been convicted?
So can you help me out with a better idea of what your objection, like which?
The question, as I understand it, she said, have you ever been charged with some sort of crime? And I object to that. That is not evidence. Has he ever been convicted of a crime is evidence.
I think it's improper character evidence. Would you like to respond?
Your Honor, I think I'm faced with the conundrum that we were facing when we have companion criminal cases. Which side goes first? I think that I'm trying to be as accurate with the record here. And I don't know that I'm necessarily trying to use it for character evidence, rather for trying to understand Mr. King's thought process on what is assaultive or not, the allegations that we have in here about domestic violence. And if he doesn't believe he's engaged in domestic violence, then trying to understand the discrepancy between what he believes he's done versus what we have in our petition.
Would you like to weigh in, Ms. Underwood?
I would just state that if Mr. Brooks is unhappy with it, he would have the opportunity to cross-examine the witness to clarify anything that he feels is unclear by Ms. Thomas's questioning. But I don't object to the question itself.
All right. Well, I think as far as the question itself goes, it is asking about potential patterns of behavior. This definition of domestic violence and/or assaultive behavior, I can understand that line of questioning. But any criminal instances, I would think would have to be an exception to the rule that prohibits testimony about criminal charges under the hearsay rule. So if we could keep it, I understand what you're trying to do, but if you could reformulate your question so that it's admissible under the court rules around criminal convictions and or allegations of criminal activity, I would appreciate it. So I'll sustain the objection, but in a different form than it was offered.
Mr. King, in the past, since July, has law enforcement been involved in your life?
Unfortunately.
And to the best of your knowledge or your understanding, why?
Since July, there was a domestic, and then her dad was brought there, and he shouldn't have been there because he hit me with his vehicle prior to November last.
Mr. King, again, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Sorry. Yes, there had been, unfortunately. And Deputy Bailey had arrested her, I guess, forcefully. Over it. When they talked to me about it out of my mom's. And Chuck had pointed at me and smacked me, or I pointed at him and smacked my finger, and I told him he needed to leave. And I found out he was in my driveway because he was trespassing in my driveway at 1157 Carlton Road, which I'd lived there about 5 years before all this happened in November. I just feel nobody's given me a time of the day on anywhere I lived.
Okay. And was there an incident that you were aware of in October or late September, October, in which Ms. Miller was accused of physically harming your oldest child?
At the hospital?
Yes.
They had, I know there was like, Brittany and Chris had talked to me, and I didn't like, I believe I had it recorded, not on this phone, because I didn't like the way I was being questioned about it. Because there was 3 different stories from the cop, from Chris and her, and from Junior and Kirsten.
Did you ever have concern about Ms. Miller's parenting of your children?
She just needs more patience.
Did you think that your children were safe with her?
Wouldn't you want them to be safe with their mother?
The question was, did you think that they were?
I mean, I lived with her for 8 years, so I have to say yes.
In these 2 instances that you've mentioned, there was one in July with Ms. Miller and her father, and then the one with your son and Ms. Miller. Did you have contact with CPS? Again, another obvious question because I know you just testified.
For the July one?
Yes.
I believe I went to his, went to the parking lot, and that's where Chris and Brittany had met me.
Okay.
She kind of come up on us. I believe I knew they were coming, and then David Goldstein had advised me to stay in the parking lot.
Okay. And
Not go inside.
Okay, and after the incident with Ms. Miller and your older son, did you speak with CPS?
That's when I spoke with him.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought you were stating, sir.
No, that's okay. And did you ever allow your son to be interviewed with CPS so they could understand what happened?
Right in front of me, yes. My father was a cop for 24 years, so I thought it was okay.
And with these, you've made a couple of comments about you've been asking maybe since last November for help. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Was CPS involved in your life last November?
I didn't really sit back and get all these notes ready. 23 November, October. That's when he said he was going to get us talk to Jerry Flynn, the landlord, which my stepdad had rented 12 years. And then he passed away in 2020. We took it over for 4.5, 5 years. And Chris, whenever the department was going to pay our back rent because we were struggling, Kirsten was struggling with money or whatever, and we got money. You know, obviously we stayed there that long. You know, I see you guys had an issue with where our money was coming from. I'm one of the, I can't remember if it's in an email or somewhere, but obviously the lead in Nevada's system, you know, the lead in the house, I mean, and now we're here. You know, things just don't make sense if somebody's going to help somebody to why you would drag it out and then never help them. It don't make sense. It's me being a formal citizen. I mean, I don't get it.
Okay. So can you help us understand, well, one, the photos, you were shown the photos that that Deputy Rincon had put into the record, correct?
Yeah, I wanted to object on a couple of them.
Well, can you just answer some of my questions about them first? Okay.
Because I have some of the same pictures.
Okay. Those photos, did they look familiar to you?
Yes.
Okay. Were they photos of what, the Hickory address, which is where I believe your mother lives.
Yes,
And on November 21st of 2024, is that where you were living?
I was actually an agent at my aunt's.
Okay, so you were at your aunt's on that date?
I got taken by Brandy Shoemate.
Okay.
So
And
my uncles and then my cousin Harley, which is my aunt's son, picked me up and took me to his mother's.
And so prior to the
in
police
Dustin.
arriving, were you living there with your children?
Was I there? Yes. Were they living there? No.
Were you aware that your children were staying there?
Were they dropped off there that day? Yes, by hand.
And did you have
numerous times?
I'm sorry?
Numerous times.
What part was numerous times?
Anna had stopped and dropped her off, picked her up, dropped her off. Before my camera system had went down, I could have proved it.
So during that period of time, so let's just say October through November, were you living with Miss Miller?
After the no contact was lifted.
When was there no contact in place?
I think somewhere around July, I believe.
So there was a no contact put in place in July of 2024.
I believe somewhere around that.
Okay. Was that as a result of the incident on Carlton?
The domestic, yes.
Okay. And when was the no contact lifted?
In October. Chris and them were supposed to get a meeting, I believe. Whenever the case was lifted, I don't have that direct information. So I couldn't clearly answer that correctly for you.
So after the no contact was lifted in October, you then started to reside with Miss Miller again?
You mean the other way around?
Or she resided with you, you guys were living together?
Once they were supposed to lift it.
Okay. And where were you living?
Well, we were here and there at the like campgrounds.
In October and November, you were at campgrounds?
Well, prior, I mean, I've been out in Indiana and down to Steve Rogers' campground, the old Lazy River.
And were your children living with you in the campgrounds?
Yes. And everybody was aware of it.
What, now your oldest child is school age. What was he doing for school?
Online?
Okay, so you had did you have access to electricity and the internet?
Yes, Deputy Rincon is incorrect about heat and electricity. He knew what he was doing, he just didn't tell the truth.
Okay. So the tents that are in those photos?
Yes, the one green tent is not livable. It's got clothes in there, which was asked to be taken care of prior. Everything got stressful on me because of my health.
Okay. And were you staying in the other tent then?
The red one?
There were two tents. So the green one was not, that was for clothes. So were you guys sleeping in the other one?
Yes.
Okay.
Here and there when I'd stay out there, yes. I understand what you're doing. You're trying to angle me at the question.
And so I'm trying to understand. So when you stayed in the other tent, what you said it was red? Is that correct?
It had blue tarp over it.
Okay.
To keep it warmer in there with the three, I had a Harley give me a heater.
Okay.
And I had two electric heaters, and then I had a heater Viral had given me, a little gray one, which wasn't keeping, obviously as it got colder, it was harder to stay there. And obviously things were getting worse for me and I didn't know whether I was living or dying. So I kept telling everybody that they needed to help figure it out.
Okay. And you've made a few comments about your health. Can you please share with us what's going on? Okay.
I'm getting it taken care of, like I told Deputy Gorn when I seen him in the hallway. kind of hard.
So to the best of your understanding, I'm going to strike that question. When the children were in your care prior to the removal in November, do you believe that they were safe and cared for?
Yes.
And to the best of your understanding, why were the children removed from your care in November?
Because nobody could get along, figure anything out like it was supposed to be stated. You know, I told 2 days prior that the kids were going to get taken if things didn't change. And I can use my mom as a witness. I mean, I believe in visions, and I've seen it. I've seen everything where I'm at today. I'm not psychic. I believe in the Lord.
And Mr. King, where are you currently living?
As soon as my mom's trailer's done, that's where I'm living.
Okay.
The township's been giving us the runaround for the last month and a half.
And would that be, so you said your mom's got the Hickory Street address? Okay. And do you have any employment right now?
I do, but I got to talk to the law enforcement and everything to be able to, I guess, go down to Ohio. I want to ask about that today.
What are you currently doing for employment?
Snow plowing, salting.
Do you have any mental health diagnoses?
Not that I know of, but I do have genetic testing that I went and got done because my normal doctor has been bought out and won't do it.
And were there any?
Because I felt like I was poisoned in October by Brandy or Billy Shoemate. That's why the PPOs were thrown on.
Were there any findings from your genetic testing?
There's 3 heterozygous genes, but I haven't been formally introduced about everything yet, which is a place from Florida going to like do a telecommunication health thing with me. I haven't given out only but Tuesdays right now with everything going on.
So there's no medication or anything that you're taking?
No, you got to take like vitamin B6 or riboflavin or niacin or magnesium, stuff like that your body needs from, you know, like plants.
Okay. And are you currently participating in any form of therapy?
Not at the moment. I haven't added or got it taken care of yet because of the vehicle.
Okay. So do you have a vehicle?
I'm working on everything getting done at the moment. It's just a lot to take on.
Yeah.
It'll get better. I was trying to work on that truck in October when everything happened, but I couldn't get out there quick enough every time. You know, Junior, my mom would get into it or something. When you're supposed to have a kid have medicine and you don't send him medicine, that's a problem.
So you're
now all of a sudden Dustin's back on his medicine, but his mom wouldn't send it to me.
During this period of time, did you have custody of your older child?
I had fought for custody in March last year, and we got every other weekend on August 23rd, but I'd already had him 140 days. So I wasn't planning on sending him back because I was threatened with a pistol by Alexander Rios.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get you guys to do something about it with Jackson and you guys.
Okay, so the period of time you had him, they were supposed to be shared custody with his mom, but you weren't sending him?
Not until my custody went through on August 23rd. And then everything got worse. She told me to keep him. You can ask Kirsten. July 3rd, we kept him from there on.
Okay. Okay.
Until she brought the cops out when Deputy Rincon said in September, I believe it was, I'd have to get that police report and the body camera footage, like I'm trying. He said they went into Mom's house illegally. Fourth Amendment rights were violated. I've contacted the civil rights attorney. I've put Lenawee County Sheriff's up on it, and I've put Lenawee CPS or whoever needs to be put on it. They denied it, but I'm going to go for it again because I believe my rights are infringed. because there's other people living in tents like you guys, CPS had stated to us.
When you were staying in tents, did you, what were the children wearing?
Clothes.
What kind of clothes?
They wouldn't always keep their shoes on, no. You can ask my kids formally, do you like to keep your shoes on to play outside? Lincoln might tell you yes or no. Did I like my shoes on all the time when I was a little kid? No.
Sure.
That big mud puddle the cops seen out there, they like playing in it. I got videos of it. Why? Because he's a little kid. I have family members that walked from 14-2 all the way to North Emergency, barefoot in the winter. What did you guys do back then? It's just a big untangled mess here that needs untangled.
Okay. And in your opinion, what would some of those issues that need to be untangled be?
Lincoln being autistic, he needs to understand that he needs to keep his clothes on or his shoes on. Sometimes he'll get down to his bare butt or his bare diaper when he's inside. I got proof of it. When I was living at the house, you know, when people have an issue or an altered mind, how are they going to listen? I know this because I had one my whole life. And nobody figured it out until this happened for me. I had to figure it out myself. It's pretty sad in my book.
Okay. What other issues need to be untangled?
That my kids come back, that you guys help me like you said you would. And not take my kids from me. You guys said that there's people living in tents last year and then all of a sudden we get them taken. It's like Mr. Brooks had said, the domestics weren't a problem in his office with me. He said the domestics weren't a problem, but now all of a sudden they are. Just needs, people need help.
Mr. King, did you throw a can of green beans at Ms. Miller?
I did not, but I can tell you the whole story. On why the PPO got beat. Right here, she gave her testimony. Lincoln smacked the door right above her eye when she had the can in her hand. And I watched it right in front of Dustin Jr. Dustin Jr. was sitting back. No.
Can you help us understand then after that incident, if that's what happened, why you and your older son took off?
Because she'd just been going on the nut. I didn't know whether it was an altered mind issue or if she really needed help. Which I've been trying to get Laura Shaler and my mom had tried to get her help after what things had happened, you know, in her life, events. I mean, everybody has events that have happened, you know. I'm not perfect, but I want to go to the top. I don't want to be right here where I'm at. Now I know too many things to sit here in this chair. That's all. Jesus. I'm ready for another question. So maybe I didn't answer that correctly.
Mr. King, prior to snow blowing, what was your employment?
Barron's in Tecumseh. I worked at Toledo Truck. Was Henry Smith. I've worked a lot of jobs with my hands, putting motors together, pulling motors out. I even built my own transmission that's in my Camaro that's Dustin's.
And so you've maintained income throughout your life?
Obviously, yeah. So that's why I got disability.
And what is your disability for?
They say it's for Munchausen syndrome. Just because they didn't want to figure it out. I had to.
And for Munchausen syndrome,
It's actually not Munchausen syndrome. It's actually either mental retardation or autism or something. One of the genes is mutated.
Okay, and so
They
that's,
just didn't want to figure it out.
and that's the situation where you have to follow up with telehealth?
That or go back to the wellness clinic in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
Which it's $100 a month or 100 up to 169. With all this going on, I had to focus on this first.
All right. There are no further questions of Mr. King.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
Where do you live, sir?
Place I lay my head down.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
The
you.
place I lay my head down every night. I just don't want it on YouTube, that's all. It's anonymous at the moment.
Do you have a permanent address?
Yes.
Do you live there alone?
No.
How many other people live there?
I'd have to really ask them if they want me giving that information out at the moment.
Well, let me ask you this. Is the residence your residence?
No, it's not.
All right. And how long have you lived there?
3 weeks.
Is there room in that residence for your children?
At the moment, no, that's why I'm trying to hurry up and get the house trailer done.
Now, you've mentioned that briefly, the business with the house and some conflicts with the township, right?
That's what brought all of us to this issue. We had a house trailer bought in September and they denied us.
And you and I have talked about this in
Yes.
my office, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, mobile home is yours, right?
Yes, bought and paid for it.
The property you want to set it on belongs to your mom.
Yes,
How big is that parcel?
quarter-acre lot.
All right. And what is the area zone?
As far as,
Well, residential.
yes, it got
residential,
resident, it's been zoned residential for 36 years.
and there are other houses in the area?
Yes,
How about mobile homes?
yes. New, 3 of them.
I'm sorry?
3 of them, which I know
All
of,
right.
in the direct area.
Is the mobile home located on that property now?
Not yet, we just tore the other one down.
There was
Tore the
another
car,
structure
yes.
there?
The one that the CPS tried to say they condemned and they never did. Or the township condemned and never did.
Is there a water hookup available?
Yes.
For the mobile home? Is there electrical utilities available?
Yes.
For the home?
Mr. King, if you could please let Mr. Brooks finish his question first. Thank you.
Are there any other utilities necessary to make that house a habitable place to live?
Other than that, we need bottle gas, but we were waiting until it was all taken care of and hooked up.
And assuming that the court within a reasonable amount of time gives you your children back, how long would it be, in your opinion, before you would be able to bring those children into your home?
I'm hoping within the next month or 2 we have it done, or at least, it'd be nice. I mean, I was hoping sooner than that the last time we were here, but we had to pay for concrete and the township made us move the trailer back farther and take my fence down. I gotta move my fence back one panel's gotta go to the back. And I just I feel like at this point it's discrimination.
What's discrimination?
No, that they're pushing our trailer back farther when we already got it surveyed to where it should sit.
I see.
From the 15 years previous, and then we got it resurveyed this last year.
Where is the mobile home currently
It
at?
was in Carson City, Michigan,
How far away from here is
in
that?
Gratiot County, about 2.5 hours. Guy named Scott. We bought it. Actually, my son Dustin got my mom on Facebook, and him and her and Verl went up and bought the trailer.
If the utilities were there, which apparently they are, and hooked up, in your opinion, is this a livable place to live?
Yes, it was livable before we bought it. It just needs, some modifications, maybe like a hole in the drywall from the owner that had renters in it, and he just didn't want to fix it up again, so he sold it to my
Nice.
mother,
Nice.
which he wanted 45 and we paid 42, I believe.
42,000?
4,200 cash.
4,200.
And we're waiting on the mover to move it for 3,500.
Now, with respect to these domestic violence charges that Mrs. Thomas was asking you about, the personal protection order aspect of it at least was dismissed, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right in this courtroom.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very same
Yes.
judge we're sitting in front of. It's the same judge, right?
Correct.
Are you working at the moment?
Yes, I need to speak with you in the courts about it, so I don't get in trouble for going into Ohio.
I'm not aware of anything prohibiting you working in Ohio.
I seen it on my bond thing.
Oh, that's not something I represent you on though, right?
Yeah. So I need to figure out who I need to ask.
Probation department, or,
I'm not on probation, but
well,
I just didn't know where to go yet. But I'm trying.
is there anything in your life, your lifestyle today, that in your opinion prevents you from having your children?
I actually quit smoking weed, but I have to take the oil till I figure out, till they give me surgery on my prostate or my hernia. Other than that, I wouldn't need to take it.
Do you use it as a sleep aid?
Yes, it helps me sleep with anxiety. If I have to get my medical card, I will.
Do you use any other street drugs?
No, I do not.
Is there anything else you'd like this court to know?
Did you want me to show that one paper I brought over to you and Susie?
If you would.
Where'd you like this to go, Your Honor?
Take it over to Mr. Brooks so he can properly address it. Please.
Thank you. Yes, this would have come up when we were here last time, right?
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, it did. Basically, if I'm reading this correctly, the mother of the 3 youngest children have indicated you should have custody of the kids, right?
Yes.
That's what you wanted the judge to see.
Yes.
And this was signed by the mother.
Yes.
I don't see any further point to doing that, honestly. The issue, sir, is between now you and the department. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. So she has her own
Thing
case
going on.
and you have yours.
I spoke to you about it, so I was, my apologies.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up? You want to talk about your personal suitability to raise your kids?
Be nice.
Do it.
How do you want me to lead? I've always had an issue with starting. Well, I mean,
Are you a good guy or a bad guy?
in law's eyes, I'm a bad guy, but I believe I'm a good guy. I hold doors open and do things for others. I mean, Mr. Gorney knows me pretty well. Give me my first seatbelt ticket, and after that, I like to wear them.
What influence do you hope you have on your children?
Well, the influence I hope I have on my children is the same influence Jim had on me to do better than what I was showed coming up. I mean, you know, not to be ornery, not to be mean, and learn to be greater. I mean, I'm not the greatest person there is, but I know I have a lot of instances where I've helped many people in this county.
In your
And my
opinion?
kids.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And my kids. I mean, if my kids see something, me do some good, and they do good for somebody, then obviously they learned it from me or seen it from me.
How effective do you believe you have been with your children in leading by example?
Other than the issue that happened in November, I thought I was doing all right until I got sick. Getting up, going to work. Obviously, Lincoln was raised in the shop in Barron's in Tecumseh. I mean, you know, me and Kirsten worked there for 3-4 years and made them a lot of money. I mean, one month we made them almost 60 grand.
Doing what?
Wrecker, wrenching, turning wrench. You know, I was the fastest. I believe I was the fastest mechanic that could pull a motor out of a mail truck over there. Hour and 45 minutes. I knew every tool there was to get it out.
Is there anything else you'd like the court to know?
I'd like them to know that we took our kids places. I mean, we took them more than the department's giving me. You know, they're not telling me I did enough with my kids. You know, they're not telling me that my kids sit in high chairs. Anna bought 2 different high chairs. The department bought high chairs to give them. We had bought high chairs and got them before the department had give us high chairs. You know, Nevada would eat in her high chair. Lincoln would climb in his own high chair. If I'd say something about it, he'd climb in it. You know, if nobody take the tray off and put it on there. You know, and my mom is witness for that. Like, you know, we didn't just, I wouldn't always go to Anna's because there was a heated match there all the time. And I just didn't like that. You know, I'd appreciate everything she did do, you know, buying them stuff and bringing it, but I just didn't like the issues. You know, that always
Once you get this mobile home placed on the property that your mother owns, do you feel these children should be returned to you?
Yes, I do. 100%. That's part of the untangled mess you were talking about.
Are there any impediments you can think of that you would think need to be taken care of before they move in to the mobile home?
Maybe the psychological evaluations and everything you're talking, or?
I'm asking you, there's psychological evaluations that need to be done?
Yes.
Do you want to do them?
I don't see why. I mean, are you asking me that I need to do them?
No, because I have no opinion, but are you willing to do it?
As long as it doesn't stop me from getting my kids, yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Questions, Ms. Underwood?
Yes. Mr. King, you've mentioned a few times that you and Ms. Miller just need help. What kind of help are you referring to?
Well, the help that we've been asking you guys, your office, to give us or give us.
I don't work for any office in particular, so again, what type of help specifically do you feel like you need?
Just guidance, parent, you know, maybe parenting. I mean, I've tried to help. You know, if I got 8 parenting classes plus 26 domestic or whatever, plus anger management or whatever, obviously I know more. And I'm trying to guide somebody farther than they've ever been guided in their life.
Okay.
Because my father wasn't present, but I knew who he was. You know, my stepdad was there for a long time. You know, he never gave up on me until he died.
Do you think that the living conditions that were present when the children were removed in November were appropriate?
No, they weren't, but was I able to do anything about it completely myself? No, I couldn't.
And why couldn't you do anything about your kids' living conditions?
Because of my health at the moment. Kirsten knows about it, my mother knows about it, Bro knows about it, Anna knows about it.
Okay, and you've talked a lot about your health. Have you seen any medical doctors?
When you know, I'm just going to put it this way to the court, I guess. When you know too much, you know too much.
What health conditions were preventing you from providing your children with appropriate and suitable living conditions?
Well, a busted eardrum that was supposed to get fixed in 19 didn't due to COVID, as well as prostrate problem from either a groin issue or a pulled hernia. I don't know. But if I don't take THC oil, like you guys are asking me not to, or THC, then I possibly will die.
And that's advice that you've received from a medical professional?
I don't, John Kelly told me I had leukemia.
Who's John Kelly?
Doctor at, it was under Yancey or with Yancey at the time, medical care here in Asian. One of my medical associates or whichever.
Okay, but you're indicating you had medical issues that were preventing you from providing your children with adequate housing. So again, what were those specific medical issues that were stopping you from making that change?
Want to listen? Trying to tell you. I have issues myself. Oh, Jesus. It's like I've been telling you guys now, but you never listen. And then all of a sudden we got to where we're at. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, you guys are trying to give me help for them, but yeah, I'm behind the wrong counter for you to help me. That makes sense.
And I'm asking, have you seen a doctor to try to address your medical
Doctors don't
condition?
want to do nothing to me over it.
Okay.
Because I know too much. Like on these government conspiracies you guys got me on.
Okay. Do you think you have any issues with mental health?
I just got diagnosed with it, but I know what can fix it. Vitamin B6.
You were just diagnosed with a mental health disorder?
Yeah, genetics. I had to get my own genetic test when I thought somebody poisoned me.
The petition indicates that there was a request to have, I'm going to call your oldest son DJ, forensically interviewed, and you would not allow that. Is that correct?
What is forensically interviewed me? He said he didn't say that. He asked it interviewed.
Okay, so did you allow your oldest son to be interviewed?
Right in front of me, yes. That was what was stated right in front of Dustin. Dustin had it recorded, to be honest with you.
Do you believe prior to CPS filing the removal petition that you were cooperating?
I believe I was. I believe you guys were asked to give me help in numerous times before we had any of this happen.
When you say you guys, who do you mean?
Every one of you guys involved, honestly. I mean, I don't know other way to put it. You government entities, government workers. I don't know how you want me to announce it in your way. Honestly, I don't.
The petition indicates that there were, after July of 2024, there were 8 attempts at contacting you by phone and 9 attempts at contacting you in person that were all unsuccessful.
Did you guys contact me for Zach? Yeah. Did you contact me for him? Yep. Brittany contacted me.
The petition states that they were unsuccessful, which means they were unable to reach you either by phone or in person a total of 17 times from
Which phone number?
I'm asking you, I'm just indicating that is what they are, that is what the petition states. Is that true?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Which phone number?
The petition just indicates again that they were unable to reach you either in person
Right, but either
or by phone.
269 number, 877 number.
How often do you change your phone number, sir?
Enough.
Okay. So wouldn't it be your responsibility to update the department with your updated phone number?
It's a two-way street.
How can CPS get an updated phone number without you providing it to them?
Well, Ashley, I think was her name. She asked me, you guys have my 269 number still. When I tried to reschedule my assessment for Dustin yesterday. Why is that? This is not my fault.
Sir, I'm asking you questions that were true at the time the petition was filed. So again.
I didn't have a 269 number at the time the petition was filed.
Okay, so between July and November, how many different phone numbers did you have?
1, 2, 3.
3. And every time you got a new phone number, did you notify
I tried.
CPS? Okay, how did you try?
Got a hold of Chris.
Okay, so you called him on your new number?
Yes.
Okay.
So did Dustin. He had Dustin's 4147 number. I believe that's how we got a hold of him.
You indicate that your younger son, I'll say your 5-year-old, has autism, is that correct?
Well, that's what Chris used on the first day of court, was severely.
Has he been diagnosed by
I don't
a
know.
doctor? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
So you don't know whether your son has autism?
But I know he does, but you guys don't.
Has he been formally diagnosed by a physician?
That's why he's on disability.
Did you have him in any type of schooling or services for his autism?
Trenton Hills, I'm the one that advocated it for it. Family First even said I did pretty well advocating for my kid, and you guys act like I did.
Let's go back and talk about this tangled mess that you indicate.
It's all a tangled mess.
Are you responsible for any of this tangled mess?
Very little, but yes.
Okay.
I got sick, so I was trying to right before it all happened, I told my mother and Kirsten that everybody needed to do something more than they were doing in order, and you can put my son on the stand and he'll tell you that things shouldn't always been like he was cooking food where Kirsten wouldn't. I'm sure it's all, balled up on everybody, but how was I supposed to get out of it when I was sick?
Whose responsibility is it to take care of their children?
The parents that have them.
Okay.
But like I said, it's a two-way street.
Is it the department's,
No.
department's job?
No, but it's the department's job when they stick their nose in to do what they're told or what they're asked of.
Okay.
Yes, it is. If they're gonna lie or open their mouth, I mean, it's on recording. In my driveway, in my house, numerous times. In text messages, numerous times.
Is living in a tent in November an appropriate place for your children to live?
Incorrect. No, it's not. Unfortunately, no, it's not. But when there's numerous people living in tents, that's what your guys' department states, and you guys couldn't help us. That's an issue in my eyes.
No further questions, thank you.
Can you redirect?
Just a couple of questions, Your Honor.
What?
Mr. King, the trailer home that you're working on,
Yes.
does it need new windows?
I don't know if it needs new windows, maybe some drywall work.
Any point in time were you working with the Community Action Center to get new windows for it?
Good job.
For you?
Not me.
Okay.
My boy and my mom talked about it.
Okay.
But there's windows in it, and they said they had talked about it needing them,
Okay.
but it don't need them.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get an idea of what will become, okay? And
A
so,
living house that was moved, that was lived in prior.
and so does it have wheels and axle and all the things it needs to be able to come?
Can we take a ease there?
What?
I'm getting upset.
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're
I'm
saying.
getting overwhelmed.
Sir, do you need a break?
Yes.
I don't see any reason to take a break. We can get him some water.
It's my disability I'm having issues with.
Ms. Thomas, the next question.
I don't believe mine was answered, just wondering about, like, is it capable of being, like, the necessities, like the axles, the tires, steering columns, all those things?
It's not a mobile home that you drive, it's a mobile home that you tow.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. That's what I was trying to understand, is what.
I usually don't like classifying or clarifying, but I see that I'm in a different setting, so I have to learn to be different. Basically, it was lived in then, it needs to be lived in now. Just needs to updated to, like painted, mom wants to paint it.
Okay.
And patch a couple holes in the wall that guy did or whoever lived in it before we bought it.
Okay. Right, I have no further questions.
Mr. Brooks, any other questions?
No.
Ms. Underwood?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony. May you return to your seat. Next witness, Ms. Evans.
I'll call Mr. Farian.
Okay, Mr. Farian.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Jill is sworn as well.
Yes, if I could, please.
I think it's empty.
Well,
I'm just kidding. We'll get it figured out.
All right, Mr. Farian, for the record, can you please indicate where you were?
yes, I work, I work for the Department of Health and Human Services here in Lebanon County.
And what is your job title?
I am a Child Protective Service ongoing worker.
And how, are you familiar with the King family?
Yes, I am.
How are you familiar with them?
I worked with them previously in 2023, roughly August through October of that year. And then I received another case, thank you, in August of this year.
In the prior case, so August through October, I just briefly want to touch base on that.
Sure.
What were you, I guess, what were the issues that caused the department to offer an ongoing case?
There was a domestic violence incident between Ms. Miller and Mr. King's mother at their residence there on Carlton Road.
And were the children present? Is that why CPS was called? Or?
Yes.
Okay. And what services were offered at that time?
It was more just case services. I know that there's been discussion about helping with housing and things of that nature. I was also working on that at the time.
And then in August, there was another case, you said. What was that case about?
You're referring to August of this year?
I'm sorry, yes, of August 2024, yep.
I received a case for, again, another incident of domestic violence. There were multiple people involved in that, including Mr. King and that would be Ms. Miller's father.
And was CPS called because children were present during that incident?
Correct, yes.
And during your ongoing case, or I guess I should ask, how long were you the ongoing worker from August of 2024 until when?
Until November 21st of this year when we actually came to court and the children were removed.
And then it switches to foster care?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So during your time as an ongoing worker, did you attempt to service this family?
To the best of my ability, yes.
And what services or referrals were made for the family?
So there have been definitely some housing referrals, referrals to Housing Help of Lenawee, Community Action Agency, the other general places within the county that could help with those type of things. There was a Family First worker that was involved with them at some time. Individual casework I did purchase, gave gas cards, things of that nature.
And during your time as the ongoing caseworker, how many contacts did you have with Mr. King?
2 that I recollect.
And
are you talking in person? Sorry, I should ask it if I could. In person or phone, text? I mean, are we?
Sorry, just want to come back here. So during your time as an ongoing caseworker, did you have regular contact with Mr. King?
I had contact with him. I would not describe it as regular.
What kind of contact did you have with him from August until November?
Okay. I had 2 face-to-face meetings with him, both in the parking lot of the department. I had multiple text messages from time to time. There were sometimes I would have to get other phone numbers just because of the changing phone numbers. And then a handful of phone calls.
And during your time and those contacts, were you able to explain to Mr. King why you were involved?
I'm pretty sure he knew prior to, but yes, we did discuss why I was involved in the opening of the cases.
And can you help, again, one of those obvious questions, but
Sure.
Tell us what you told him as to why you were involved.
Well, it was the domestic violence incident, or alleged domestic violence incident, that the department found that there was a preponderance of evidence from July. And just to verify the well-being also for Jackson County of his son, DJ.
Were you able to verify the well-being of the 3 younger children with Miss Miller?
Yes, I would. I would see them at the home of her grandmother, Anna Dietrich.
And in comparison, were you able to easily verify the well-being of the oldest child who was with Mr. King?
I was not able, not easily, no.
And in fact, the only times you were able to verify that were those 2 face-to-face meetings?
Correct, yes.
Did you have any concerns about the well-being of the children during your open case?
The 3 youngest, no, I did not. When I saw them at that home, they were usually clean, well kept, usually in clean clothes, other than you could tell that they've been playing. I think one day they had popsicles, so that was obviously on them towards the end of summer there. Other than that, no, I had no concerns with them. Junior, again, the 2 times I saw him, he was okay. I mean, I've seen worse. I don't think that there was any glaring concerns.
During your your ongoing case, were there any other complaints that came in regarding this family?
There were 2 complaints that came in. They were not assigned to me. They were assigned out to an investigator.
Okay. Were you present at the time of removal?
Yes, I actually. Well, I wasn't present at the time when Deputy Rincon had Anna Dietrich come and pick the children up and take them that night. But I was present when Junior was removed, yes.
Okay. And just to lay some foundation there, Deputy Rincon had the 3 children picked up by grandma at the time that he had went there to respond to the incident. Is that correct?
Correct. The incident that took place November 20th, 21st.
Okay.
Yes.
And then subsequently, you are the author of this petition before the court, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then after submitting this, the court issued an order for removal?
Correct, yes.
And it was at that point in time that then you went to attempt to obtain custody of the oldest child?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And describe to us what happened that day.
Well, initially, I had gone to the address of a Miss Lee Sneed, who is the aunt of Mr. King. I initially went there as protocol. I took law enforcement with me. Multiple officers attended with me. When we initially got there, knocked on the door, Miss Sneed answered and stated that he was not there and she did not know where he was. So I was going to attempt to go to the Hickory Street in Morenci address, and on the way, I received some information that he was indeed at that residence. So myself and law enforcement went back there and then spoke to Ms. Sneed, who did indicate he was indeed there.
Was he agreeable to honoring that court order and allowing the oldest child to come to you?
No, not initially. There was a couple hours where law enforcement and myself tried to explain the situation and what was happening and why it was happening. I did attempt to present him with the petition and the paperwork to follow and the order signed by Judge Sala to indicate that the child was to be removed. He refused to take that from me. Both myself and law enforcement tried to explain to him, you know, that what it said in there. I eventually just left it on the railing of the home because he refused. He told me that he couldn't, if he took it, then that would mean that it was, I guess, authorized. If he didn't, then it didn't really happen.
And when you were finally able to get the oldest child with you, did you observe the child to be in fine condition?
You know, he was in halfway decent spirits. His hair was a little long. His clothing was a little dirty. There was a notable smell, just of unwashed clothes. But other than that, I mean, and no marks, no bruises that I would consider concerning in that regard.
Were there any concerns about whether the children had, you know, been fed recently prior to removal or prior to being with Miss Dietrich?
I cannot speak to anything about the 3 younger children. I did not see them until the 21st, I believe it was, at their placement where they resided. I saw them then. They looked great.
You've seen the photos that Deputy Rincon took?
Correct, yes.
And when you saw the children the next day, did they look like that?
No, they did not.
You mentioned that Families First was involved with this family.
Mm-hmm.
To the best of your knowledge, did Mr. King participate with them?
I think he initially participated in some of the earlier stuff, but ultimately when it came to working with them, he did not so much in the second go round, which I would say, took place during my case. So August, September, October, in that time frame. But some of that was due to the no contact order that Miss Miller and Mr. King had in place. So he wasn't able always to participate. Plus the 3 youngest children were found in her care. So they were primarily with her.
And during that period of time where there was the no contact order and you were the case manager, you know, I'm going to strike that because you've already said you can't speak on that. I'm sorry. During your time as ongoing case worker, though, did you attempt to offer Mr. King any services to address domestic violence or his mental health?
I did not attempt to do that. He was very much focused on needing help with housing. And I did provide him the resource guide. I did provide him the housing help. You know, the department doesn't always have the resources to financially provide things for them, or just provide housing to them. We just don't have those things. I did direct him also, he could contact a caseworker for state emergency relief application, in which they might have been able to help him with first month's rent, those kind of things.
Were you concerned about Mr. King's, yes, lack of initiative in reducing or preventing exposing his children to domestic violence?
Of course, I mean, that's always a concern of mine in any case. As long as he and Miss Miller indicated that they weren't around each other, I mean, there was not necessarily an immediate threat or concern at that particular time. And
you mentioned, it sounded, and based on his testimony, there was a housing crisis kind of in the last year and a half.
Correct.
And to the best of your knowledge, did both of the adults in the home receive Social Security?
Yes.
And had any assistance been given or resources for like budgeting or trying to help them stay within budget?
I don't know that anything was done while I had the case. There was this gap, again, of about a year where other workers had been involved at different times working with them. And if that was addressed during that, I'm unaware. At that time, up until, I think July August, that time, they were still at Carlton Road. So they were able to stay there for another almost year after I closed my initial
Okay.
portion of it.
Great, thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of Mr. Farian.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
I have none.
Ms. Underwood?
What was it that Mr. King did or did not do that really caused you to feel the need to then file this removal petition?
Well, just a minute, I object. Perhaps a little voir dire, if I may.
Okay.
Did you make the decision to remove the children from the home, or did someone else?
As always, it is a team decision within the department. We bring the facts there. Initially, it was the incident that opened the case was in July. Then we had the incident in October with Miss Miller and Junior. Then we had the incidents of Mr. King still allowing Miss Miller to be around that child even after there was a no contact order. The concerns brought forth of that they may be staying in these tents behind these homes. So the petition was filed based off of the cumulative things and then the last domestic violence incident that took place.
That was a series of issues, right?
Correct.
Reviewed by a series of people, right?
The whole department, yes, with contact with our counsel, yes.
Not just your decision, was it?
No, it was not, sir.
I object to the question. He didn't make the decision, at least not by himself.
Would you like to respond?
Your Honor, he's just asked all of the questions that I would have asked anyways as a follow-up, so I don't feel the need to. I can withdraw the question.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Sure. The petition indicates that there were 9 attempted unannounced visits, or 9 attempted visits that were unsuccessful in person.
That was cumulative. That was including investigators, not just me alone.
Okay. Did you have issues with contacting Mr. King based on the fact that he had several different phone numbers?
At times, yes. I mean, I would have to. I would contact on one number, and then sometimes I would get a text on a different number saying, "I heard you were looking for me." I didn't always get a quick response either. Sometimes a coworker would indicate that they were attempting to get a hold of them, investigator, and then I was able to get a hold of him. He would respond to me. So I think it was like a pick and choose sometimes.
What would you say Mr. King's level of cooperation was with the department prior to the removal petition being filed?
It was minimal because there was not just Lenawee County looking for him. There was also Jackson County because there was an open case with his oldest son, Junior, that was involved there. And they would attempt to get a hold of him. They would send out law enforcement to also attempt to get a hold of him at the house on Hickory. So there were a lot of different people attempting to get a hold of him at different times.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Any recross, Mr. Brooks?
No.
All right, thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other witnesses today, Ms. Thomas?
Your Honor, just briefly call Miss Kelly.
Okay.
Brittany Kelly.
Ms. Brittany Kelly, come on up.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Good afternoon, Ms. Kelly. Can you, again, for the record, state where you're employed?
Department of Health and Human Services.
What is your job title?
I'm a Child Protective Services investigator.
And how are you familiar with the King family?
I have had I've had 3 CPS investigations with them since July of 2024.
Can you please elaborate what those 3 investigations were?
The first one was regarding a domestic between Kirsten and Dustin at their home in Carlton. And then the second investigation was regarding an incident between Kirsten and Junior that took place at the hospital. And then the third one was the most recent domestic between Kirsten and Dustin.
And during your investigations, were you ever able to make contact with Mr. King?
Via text a few times. There were 3 different numbers throughout the last 6 months that I've contacted him on. Usually he would text me back a few days later. And I had only ever seen him one time in person. I was not able to make any home visit. I made attempts, but was not successful with those attempts with him.
And so were you able to verify the well-being of the oldest child that was with him?
I saw him one time. That was the same day that I saw Dustin Sr.
And during your investigation what was the outcome of the first investigation for the domestic in July?
I substantiated in that case open as a category 2 to Chris Varian, who's the ongoing worker.
And why did you make the determination to substantiate that investigation?
The prior ongoing case had just closed and there were concerns of domestic violence during that case. Overall, that case was unsuccessful for services. And I felt the family with a new incident and the same concerns arising again, that they still needed some services from us.
And during that first investigation, did you see Dad at all during that, Mr. King?
No.
And did you see the oldest child at all?
No.
Okay. How long do your investigations last?
We have 30 days to complete them, roughly about 45 after a supervisor reads and reviews and they close, so.
And then the second one was the incident between Ms. Miller and the oldest child. What was the outcome of that investigation?
I also substantiate on that. Which when there's an open ongoing case, what we normally do is we substantiate, we open the case, and then we do a case closure on the ongoing side, but still allow the ongoing worker to keep their portion open, if that makes sense.
And was it during that investigation that you were able to see Mr. King?
Yes.
And was he aware of the situation in which you were investigating?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, was he still permitting the oldest child to be with Miss Miller?
It's hard to say. In the beginning of the investigation, Kirsten had told me that Junior was with her. She told me what happened at the hospital. Dustin wasn't cooperative with law enforcement. And when I spoke with Junior, he wouldn't allow me to interview him alone. He did let me speak to him in front of him. But he was aware of why law enforcement and CPS were involved for the new allegations against Kirsten.
And during that investigation, was there a complaint called in regarding the oldest of the younger 3 and the condition he was found at school, to the best of your knowledge?
I believe so.
Was that, do you know what happened with that complaint?
I believe it got rejected by our intake, and just when they reject those, they ask that the ongoing or investigator, if there's a current investigator, they ask that we address those concerns. And me and Chris were both actively working with the family at that time.
And then you were called again, or there was the third complaint because of the most recent incident of alleged domestic violence?
Correct.
And during that investigation, obviously it led to this petition, but what was the outcome from your end?
I substantiated on that case as well.
And was Mr. King cooperative with you during that investigation?
The only time I spoke with him was at court the day that we had the prelim hearing. And we spoke very briefly in the hallway. He told me that he wasn't going to speak to me about the allegations, and I left it at that.
And during your investigation from November, did you have contact with any of the children, or were you able to observe any of the children?
From the third investigation?
Yes.
I made contact with them after removal. I think the petition was filed within 24 hours of me receiving the investigation. So the foster care workers made contact with the 3 younger children at placement, and then Chris had made contact during the removal. I wasn't involved in the actual removal.
Thank you. I have no further questions of Ms. Kelly.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
No.
Ms. Underwood?
I have no questions.
Thank you for your testimony. May I resume your seat? Any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, at this time, we're going to take a 15-minute recess, and then we'll come back and conclude any witness testimony and move into closings. All right, we're back on record. All of our same parties and attorneys have rejoined us. Mr. Brooks, witness presentation this afternoon?
I'll call my first and only witness, Dustin King.
Okay, Mr. King, you have been sworn. You remain under oath. Back up to the witness.
King, you and I had a very brief conversation just as the break happened, right?
Right.
And you told me you wanted one more opportunity to tell the court a few things. Is that right?
Yes.
What are they?
I was a trying dad before all this happened, and I'd like to try, not necessarily that I got to try again, but keep the promises that come with a kid, having kids. And just try to be there for them as the opportunity was or still is there, that I was, trying to give them the right opportunity to prosper like I did, because I had a rough upbringing myself, and I just feel that my kids were getting a better opportunity at the beginning, and things just got a little rough at the end last year. And I feel like they were using their utensils and eating in a high chair and doing the things that, toddlers do, and using their words. And I know Leo was putting sentences together last year when he had his, can't remember, it was neonatal or something I give for toxicity, metal toxicity from all these juices and all these red 40s and all these things that, Food and Drug Administration needs to get a hold of, because our kids are not prospering like they should.
Well, what kind of meals do you feed your kids?
We had steak, we had tacos, we had burgers, we had taco pockets, we had French fries. Meatloaf. All things that their mother liked to cook. I'd help cook too when I was able. And she knows that she can, put it on the record. And my mother was there. The other family, it was
Who prepared those meals?
Huh?
Who prepared those meals?
Me and their mother.
All right. Go ahead.
Whether
I'm
it
sorry. I don't mean to
be, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Sometimes it wasn't always all three. It wasn't allotted times for the routine, but there was a routine of having those things, whether it be baths or eating in a high chair, or whether me and Sissy waking up every morning saying hi, giving her a high five, or her smiling at me and getting her toast or butter and toast or an egg or whatever she needed or wanted. She might not have been able to talk and say what she wanted yet, but we were on the verge of doing those things.
Has anybody accused you of having children who are, quote, underfed?
I would say they are trying to, I thought there was one letter that come from CPS like that, I believe. I can't remember what the year was.
Well, obviously what you're telling me is they're not underfed.
Right, correct. I just feel I needed to speak up and say the things that they did do because my mother was there. You know, the grandmother wasn't always there. Well, other than I appreciate everything she did do. You know,
So
buying
mom was
things.
feeding them too.
Right, right. Anna would come and feed them. You know, whatever they'd go out to eat, whatever, you know, go to Anna's, whatever. It wasn't just the tent was not a permanent area. It was to just understand like, hey, this is something you don't want in life. You need to get up and go, like figure it out. And we were waiting on money, you know, to get there. Obviously, nobody's perfect in life. I mean,
You're not trying to claim that how they were found is the permanent condition you're gonna raise.
Right, exactly. It's not something I ever lived in my life other than her wanting to go and, you know, experience it this past summer or whichever, however. It was more or less, we had to get out of Jerry's house because of all the, you know, the department knew the issues with the house, and it just, that's why I'd asked for help from them numerous times, because I felt like the mycotoxins in the house from the mold was taking me out. None of my doctors want to give me the mycotoxins test.
Let me ask you this, how would you describe your relationship with the mother of your 3 youngest kids?
Well, I mean, we went to Tennessee, we went to Gatlinburg, we've been a lot of places together. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, it was better than what the department was looking at it as. Because she encouraged me to do more than what Junior's mother did, is what I was saying. She encouraged me to do more than my mother had, other than when I was growing up.
And today,
I
you
believe
with
she
respect
was-
to the mother?
I do what?
With respect to you and the mother of the 3 youngest kids, how would you describe the relationship?
I'd say it's pretty well. I mean, I feel like when I was in foster care solutions and Lincoln kept asking for his mother and I couldn't really say much about it, you know, that burned me. That hurt me.
What hurt you?
To not be able to talk about her to them.
Well, I'm asking you to talk about her. Is there a problem?
There's no problem. It's more, it's an issue.
You don't get along?
No, we get along with everybody.
No, I mean with each other.
Yeah, I just miss it.
You miss her? I'm gonna take that as a yes and put it on the record. Sir, we are very short of time and none of us wants to come back again another
I don't
day.
either.
So do you have anything else you want to tell the court? Take a deep breath and tell the court what you want them to know. This is your time.
I know Chris was supposed to put Dustin Jr. with my brother, and that never happened. That was a lie. I didn't like that very well. And that was a lie on text messages and verbal.
You do realize he was part of a team, right?
Yes.
Wasn't like a dictator.
Right. I just felt like it was because of the way he presented the petition to me and laid it on my aunt's porch rail and not in my hands directly. That was indirectly giving me the order prepared for me. And the numerous cops that were there, I have it recorded, numerous videos.
You do realize that he may think exactly what he told you, and the other members of his team overrule what he thinks. You realize that's possible?
Possible, yes.
Just like I may think a certain something.
Just like the president.
And the court may very well think a different thing. That doesn't mean I've lied to you.
I understand, yes.
What else is on your mind?
Hoping that my kids are more encouraged to use their words and they're more than they are their violence. You know, I was trying to write those things down before I got my rights taken on the 12th of December, I believe, or that I couldn't see.
Your rights have
them.
not been taken.
Not been taken, but my rights to see them correctly, I guess is more. They took the rights to see them for the time being at the moment.
Anything else you want the court to know? You want your kids back?
Yes, but obviously I was doing the things to, I mean, I know there's more other people out there that, you know, like Barron's and Tecumseh, just people knew what I was trying to do in my kids' life for my kids. Obviously.
Do you want to reestablish your relationship with the mother of your children?
It would be nice someday, yes.
You know whether she has an opinion on this?
I don't know.
All right. Are you prohibited from talking to her at this point?
At the moment, yes, we are.
By what?
I believe the domestic, on the 3rd, I have both cases through together between their dads, assault and battery.
But not the PPO.
But not the PPO, the PPO is gone. But I believe McFarland put a no contact in. Office.
Okay.
Court.
Okay. Unless you got any other thing on your mind, I'm going to say no further questions.
Other than the no contact?
Yeah. Yeah. Any other points you want to make?
Not at the moment.
Thank you.
Questions, Ms. Thomas?
Mr. King, did you read the petition?
I'm slower to read things because of my disabilities, but I have been going through it and I get overwhelmed at certain points of it. And I have to take a breather.
What you have read, was any of it true?
As far as?
Anything that you read in it?
Elaborate your question a little more.
I'm only asking questions. Was anything in the petition that you read, was it true? That you can recall? If you can't recall, that is fine.
As far as like your main one, what you're saying is I need to look at it real quick?
Do you need to refresh your memory? You have to you have to ask the court if.
Yeah, I need to refresh my memory.
Mr. King, frankly, I was just asking from your recollection, if there was anything that stood out.
Put me on the spot at the moment. I can't remind myself everything that I reviewed it. I could give you more further detail of what you're asking.
I don't know further questions.
Ms. Underwood?
Just to clarify, you indicated that the tents were not a permanent living situation, is that correct?
Correct.
How long had you been living in tents with your children?
You had right there, what was it, August, I think you guys were talking?
I'm asking you,
I
how long were
believe
you living
you
in?
and Chris were talking, or somebody was talking about August or September. Because I know we went there a week and then we left.
So
I know it wasn't more than a month and a half, I can guarantee you that.
Okay.
Like I said, there was cameras.
When you were living in the tents, how would you cook meals?
Fryer, griddled. You can even ask Junior fried French fries.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. May you return to your seat.
I have no further witnesses.
Any witnesses, Ms. Underwood?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, closing arguments, beginning with Ms. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. As this court is aware and the department understands, it is our burden to prove by preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not, a 51% threshold, that at least one of the allegations in the petition is true and that it constitutes a violation of the juvenile code. Start by saying I think that it is, we've met our burden and some. Today, Deputy Rincon's testimony was that of his own eyewitness account. He had taken photos because of the complete concern and disbelief that he had that children were living in the conditions that he witnessed. This is an officer or deputy who has been part of a sheriff's office for a year. And in that year, through the office, has become very familiar with this family and also has personally responded to the residents 3 or 4 times, or to these individuals 3 or 4 times for domestic violence, for civil disputes. And I think that's a clear indication of the environment that these children were subjected to while in the care of their parents. I think most notable is in the photos is the fact that short children like to play outside and they like to be barefoot and they can get dirty. But these children were found outside in the evening on a 38-degree night with inappropriate clothing. Their arms were bare, their ears were bare, their feet were bare. Their skin was red and reflecting that they were cold. And the disarray, I don't even know how to word this. I don't know the adjective to use to describe that backyard and where they were playing. None of that is appropriate for children and surely poses a substantial risk of harm to their physical health and emotional and mental well-being. Deputy Rincon's concerns were so severe that he had asked the prosecuting attorney to consider child abuse charges, something that we don't always see in response to domestic violence disputes. Per Mr. King's own testimony, he was aware of these conditions. Clearly, he just testified that he'd been living there for a month and a half, and his testimony was very scattered between all of the questions that we've asked. And so it's very hard to piece together what actually happened in his mind in the situation. If we were to take the fact that he was living in this property for the last month and a half with his children, before they were removed, we're talking about October through November 21st, during which time there was a complaint for his partner abusing his oldest child, and a no contact order from a domestic dispute in July was also in place. So whether there's complete disregard for court orders is up for question, and whether he fully can protect his children is also up for question. If he's continuing to allow someone who pushed his child in a hospital room and his child hit his head to continue to be with this child. We know that there was also his inability to follow a court order for custody. He refused to return that child to the biological and legal mother who shared legal custody, but I believe also had sole physical. And the concerning part of all of this is that Mr. King testified, it is his responsibility as a parent to safeguard the children. He failed to do so. He failed to take the necessary steps to safeguard them, and has placed that blame and deflected upon everyone else. We've collectively in this room have been called you all, despite there only being 2 CPS workers, 2 department heads. This is not Community Action Agency. This is not CMH. This is the department, solely the child welfare system. In that, he has not taken responsibility for himself or for his children. There are several options that could have happened. And additionally, the other concerning part here is that this family is not a stranger to CPS and the services offered. This family had an ongoing case in 2023. Mr. King in his testimony said he had 60 to 70 classes between domestic violence and anger management and parenting. And if that's true, then what we're seeing here is a lack of benefit from those services. We have a parent who struggles to adapt to society's norms, and that might be okay if he were successfully able to manage his own needs and his family's needs. But he's placed the blame on others, including Ms. Miller, and it's her fault because she needs mental help. And yet he has stayed and continues to want to work on that relationship, and he's subjected his children to this environment of chaos and disarray. It is clear that these children at the time the petition was filed were physically neglected, and we're at a substantial risk of harm as relates to the physical and mental well-being. And Mr. King, as a legally responsible parent, failed to ensure their safety and well-being in that situation. So, Anna, we are asking the court to find that there is a preponderance of the evidence and that we have better standard here, our burden of proof, and to take personal jurisdiction over Mr. King and move on to a dispositional phase. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks?
Counsel says she can't my client hasn't been able to explain what's gone wrong that resulted in us being involved here. Let me help. The relationship between he and the mother's children deteriorated for reasons I don't know. Hopefully he's going to get over that, move on. He has never said he thought the living situation that the officer took a photographs of is an appropriate place to live. Nobody's claimed he tried to keep those kids there during winter months. It was 38 degrees, it was too cold. Backyard was not an appropriate place to live. He is doing his best to come up with a conventional, safe, comfortable home for his 3 children. And he's getting some problems associated with the local township government. As a lawyer, I've run across that numerous times with zoning issues. But he knows what the proper standards are to raise his kids. He's described to you what life was like before his kids were taken. They were getting appropriate meals from him and from the kid's mother. And as for all of the other stuff, well, some of that violence business, you heard directly the testimony yourself not even a week ago from her point of view, which doesn't jive with what the allegations in the petition say. I ask that the court take that into consideration. Not to say that today you need to bring those kids home today, because he's still working on that house. Let's get the house the way it needs to be. Let's get DHHS out there, take a look, and when that's all said and done, assuming they say that thing is up to snuff, then return those 3 kids to their dad. Thank you.
Ms. Underwood?
Your Honor, based on the testimony provided by Mr. King as well as the arguments made by Mr. Brooks, I think it's clear that there's admissions that at least one of the allegations in the petition are true. Mr. King's admitted that the living conditions at the time the petition was filed were not appropriate for children, and that they shouldn't be living in tents. However, he again testified to the fact that they were. Mr. King and his domestic partner both have incomes that should go toward providing housing or other type of stability for the children. However, it's clear that that was not happening at the time the petition was filed. And we have a situation here where there have been several attempts and several efforts made by the department to avoid removing the children. However, ongoing struggles with domestic violence, not only between the parties, but between children and parties, continue to occur, which put all of the children in an unreasonable risk of harm. So not only their actual physical living conditions that were inappropriate, but again, the domestic violence in the home has clearly been a risk of harm for those children. And Mr. King also testified that, again, he and Ms. Miller both need help, that they need resources yet, and they're unable to provide the things that their children need. So again, that's an admission that jurisdiction is appropriate in this case. There is a preponderance of the evidence that at least one of the allegations, if not more, in the petition are true, and that does violate the juvenile code. I would ask that Your Honor find that there is a preponderance, continue to have the children in the care of their current placement, and then we move into the dispositional phase. Thank you.
Thank you. The court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of today's adjudication hearing. I do find that there has been a preponderance of the evidence shown that there was a violation of the statute in this case, in that Dustin King is the parent legally responsible for the care and maintenance of all 4 children and did neglect or refuse to provide proper or necessary support. That includes housing, education, self-care, care for the children, medical care for the children by his own admissions. He and the family were living in a tent in the backyard, that they had educational supports in the past, but that they were not receiving them at the time of the removal of the children. It was uncontested that where they were living was dangerous. In a tent in the backyard, Deputy Rincon testified and took photos that were provided to the court that substantiated that the area in which the children were living was unprotected, excepting for dangerous amounts of trash and other items. They were clearly unkempt, dirty, not well provided for. The photograph, one of the photographs where I can see both of the children's feet, there's a propane tank within the vicinity of the child. For example, it's very clear that the conditions of the child at the time of the removal, the children at the time of the removal, were absolutely abysmal, to be perfectly frank. By Mr. King's testimony, he spoke today to the fact that the children used to be able to use silverware and used to be able to speak and use their words. And by that admission, he's admitting that at the time of the removal, that the children were effectively being kept in the backyard, living in a tent, perhaps not even as well taken care of as some people provide for their animals, to be perfectly honest. He claims that his a reason for this is because he had at one point said an altered mind. He claimed to be on disability for Munchausen's, mental retardation, autism, prostate hernia, and also leukemia at one point. His testimony was tangentially related to the questions at best. He seemed to have a good memory of some things and or others. And then at times, what he wanted to testify to, he was very specific about. But when questions were put to him about the conditions of the children or some of the issues arising around this case, all of a sudden he was not able to connect his answers. He reversed the dynamic in many cases. At one point, very aggressively responding to one of Ms. Underwood's questions to indicate that clearly, if she were to be asking any more difficult questions, he was not going to be tolerating that. Was the communication and the information that I obtained here. On a regular basis, he spoke out, including just a moment ago, indicating that he is not interested in participating in an orderly presentation of the court case. And it also demonstrates, frankly, the dynamics that are a danger to the children in the home. These are power and control tactics that were utilized today in the response to the questions, manipulation of the answers, the manipulation of the questioning, his responses, his physical behaviors and actions. It all indicates further support for a violation of the statute and does answer a lot of the question as to why the children were found in the condition and the state that they were found in at the time of their removal. All of that certainly does present a substantial risk of harm to each of the children's mental and physical well-being. So there are two main aspects of the statute that have been violated. The second is the home or environment by reason of neglect, cruelty, drunkenness, criminality, and depravity on the part of Mr. King is an unfit place for the children to live at this time. I also find that there's a risk to their mental harm as well as their physical harm. And I am taking personal jurisdiction over Mr. King. Issues including analysis of mental health, emotional health, employment, transportation, housing will all need to be addressed in order to allow Mr. King to demonstrate that he's able to not only provide a physical home for his children, but also that he is safe to be around to avoid domestic violence dynamics, aggression dynamics, and many of the other unfortunate and very dangerous patterns that present in the household as this court sees them today. I have availability, I would like to say, at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, February 4th for purposes of the initial disposition. The children will remain placed under the discretion of placement within DHHS, pending further proceedings, given all of the findings of the court today and the lack of any progress around any of those issues between the date of the filing of the petition and today.
Time?
11 a.m. Tuesday, February 4th.
Court case includes 2 of them.
February 4th at 11 o'clock.
Yes. All right, unless there's any questions, that's all for today.